Welcome back to the November 1st through 2nd, 2023 board meeting. My name is Sang Oh, President of the board. Before we convene, I'd like to remind everyone present that the board is a consumer protection agency charged with administering and enforcing pharmacy law. Where protection of the public is inconsistent with other interests sought to be promoted, the protection of the public shall be paramount. As I facilitate this meeting, I will announce when we are accepting public comment. I have advised the meeting moderator to allow 3 minutes to each individual providing comments. We will begin with public comments for individuals attending in person, followed by public comments for individuals participating via WebEx. This approach is necessary to facilitate this meeting. Before we get started, I would like to ask staff moderating the meeting to provide general instructions. Moderator?
All right, this is the moderator. When public comment is requested, I, the moderator, will turn on the WebEx question and answer feature to facilitate public comment. Comments should be limited to the topic addressed on that specific agenda item. We will display instructions on the screen each time, and the member may click on the question mark typically at the lower right-hand corner of their WebEx screen, type the word comment into the text box, and then click send to have their request be recognized. You may also choose to raise your hand by clicking the hand icon at the bottom of your computer's WebEx screen. Or if you are an audio-only participant, you can press *3 on your device to raise your hand. You will then be invited to unmute yourself, and then each commenter will be given 3 minutes to speak with a 10-second warning. At the end of that time, their microphone will then be muted, and we will move on to the next commenter. I believe that is all the instructions I have, and it looks like we also have Board Member De La Paz on as well.
Perfect. Morning, Jose. All right, let me get the quorum down. Roll call down really quick. Jesse Crowley.
Licensee member present.
Thank you. Good morning, Jesse. Renee Barker.
Licensee member present.
Good morning, Renee. Indira Cameron Banks.
Public member present.
Good morning, Indira. Jose De La Paz.
Public member present.
Good morning, Jose. KK Jha.
Licensee member present.
Good morning, KK. Jit Patel.
Licensee member present.
Hi, Jig. Maria Serpa.
Licensee member present.
Good morning, Maria. Nicole Tebow.
Licensee member present.
Good morning, Nicole. Jason Wise.
Morning, public member. I'm here.
Good morning, Jason. A quorum has been established and we have a full house. I love it. Gonna move to almost full house. Move to next agenda item 9, update from the Department of Consumer Affairs. I'd like to welcome Judy Bucarelli, Staff Services Manager with the Department of Consumer Affairs, to provide an update from the department. Ms. Bucarelli, hopefully that's the correct pronunciation. The floor is yours. Oh, there you are. I feel like I'm hearing a muffled voice.
Can you hear me, President?
Oh, yeah. Yes,
okay.
There you are.
But you can't see me, and I do need to be on video, so.
This is the moderator. If you click that start video button.
Yeah, I did, Sarah.
Oh, it was working earlier. Did you click? Oh, wait,
there I am. Success. Thank you so much. Well, good morning. My name is Judy Bucarelli from the Department of Consumer Affairs, and I would like to thank you for the opportunity to join you today. On behalf of the department, I'd like to thank all board members for your service and dedication to protect the consumers of California. I'll begin my report today by providing a business, consumer services, and housing agency update. Business, Consumer Services, and Housing Agency Secretary Lourdes Castro Ramirez has been appointed as the Chief of Housing and Homelessness in the office of Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass, effective today, November 2nd. Secretary Castro Ramirez has been an extraordinary partner to DCA, the boards and bureaus, and a relentless consumer protection champion. We are grateful for her leadership, and we will miss her very much and wish her all the best in her new role. Next, I'd like to share a diversity, equity, and inclusion update, also referred to as DEI. Training continues to be a priority for the DEI Steering Committee. In October, 138 DCA leaders and 26 board members completed a DEI human-centered approach training provided by University of Massachusetts consultant Dr. Bernard Gibson. On November 7th, University of Massachusetts consultant Christopher Veal will provide a virtual training entitled DEI Dialogue for Leaders. The training will be provided to DCA managers, supervisors, and leadership, and will include example language and tools, discuss psychological safety and how it impacts these conversations, and interactive discussions around challenges leaders are currently facing. DCA encourages all executive officers and their management teams to attend the training. DCA continues to support the boards and bureaus in expanding culturally competent communications and promote the importance of meeting the needs of all California consumers, licensees, and applicants. DCA's Deputy Director of Communications recently met with the Consulate of Mexico in San Francisco to share information and resources about DCA, as well as hear about areas of interest to the consulate. As a result of the meeting, DCA offered partnership for future in-person and online events and to share available consumer resources. The DEI Steering Committee is pleased to highlight the work of the Board of Vocational Nursing and Psychiatric Technicians. DCA's Tribal Liaison and DEI Steering Committee Chair, Yefana Lamar, recently introduced the Executive Officer of the Board for Vocational Nursing and Psychiatric Technicians to Britta Guerrero, Executive Officer of the Sacramento Native American Health Clinic. The meeting was to discuss the possibility of tribal health clinics serving as locations for vocational nursing students needing to obtain clinical hours required for licensure. Participants also discussed strategies to encourage members of the California's tribal communities to consider becoming a healthcare provider. Future discussions to include consortiums of tribal health providers, such as the Consortium for Urban Indian Health and the California Rural Indian Health Board, are in the planning stages. The DEI Steering Committee would like to continue to learn about and showcase the DEI activities of DCA's boards and bureaus. If your board has DEI efforts to share, please send them to DCA Board and Bureau Relations. At this point in the update, I would typically provide members with information regarding SB 544 and the 4 meeting options that will be available beginning on January 1st, 2024, pursuant to the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. Later in today's agenda, DCA Legal Counsel Corinne Gartner will be providing you with a presentation that will include detailed information on this bill, including the meeting options. So with that said, I'll move on to mandatory board member training reminder. As we approach the final months of the year, there is a DCA-wide mandatory training that if you haven't already completed, we ask you to do so immediately. All DCA employees and appointees, including board and advisory council members, will need to complete the sexual harassment prevention training by December 31st. This training is available in the department's learning management system, also referred to as LMS. If members need assistance with accessing LMS to take this training, please contact your board liaison or DCA Board and Bureau Relations. And next, I will share an out-of-state travel update. With the recent signing of SB 447 by Governor Newsom, California's travel restrictions to states that have adopted discriminatory anti-LGBTQ plus laws immediately ended. California's restricted travel states list was eliminated and replaced with a new public awareness project that will consult with community leaders to promote California's values of acceptance and inclusion of the LGBTQ plus community across the country. Over the past years, several of the out-of-state trips requested by boards were not authorized because the travel was to a state on the restricted travel list. Now, out-of-state travel to all states is permitted if the trip is critical to the functions and needs of the board. Out-of-state travel requests must still follow the established process for review and approval by DCA, agency, and the governor's office. Please reach out to your executive officer or board and bureau relations with any questions. Equally important is the Our Promise campaign launch, State Employees Giving at Work campaign. In partnership with board members, DCA will continue its tradition of generosity and caring for our communities. This year's Our Promise Giving at Work campaign officially kicked off on October 5th and runs through December 31st, 2023. Leading our efforts this year are DCA's co-chairs Monica Vargas, Deputy Director of Communications, and Yvonne Durantes, Assistant Deputy Director of Board and Bureau Relations. This annual campaign gives state employees, including board members, an opportunity to support nonprofits through a one-time donation or payroll deduction. These contributions make a positive impact by providing vital resources to those experiencing poverty, homelessness, food insecurity, and also offers support to causes such as veterans, animals, and the environment, and more. We hope that you will join the state's campaign and contribute to a nonprofit or nonprofits of your choice. For additional information on how to give, please contact Yvonne Durantes, Board and Bureau Relations. And finally, I will share some important information about this year's DCA Turkey Drive. On November 14th, board members and staff will have another opportunity to come together and give back. DCA will host the second annual Turkey Drive with donations benefiting Joey's Food Locker, a community food bank located in Natomas near DCA headquarters in Sacramento. Donations of frozen turkeys, hams, and chickens, as well as non-perishable food items, will be accepted at 3 DCA office locations in the Sacramento area on November 15th. For information on how to participate and donate, please contact your executive officer. This concludes my presentation, and thank you for the opportunity to join you today. At this time, I will hand it back to President O, and I welcome any questions from the board.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bucciarelli. Sorry for
Welcome.
that. I appreciate that. I appreciate your presentation and update. If members any questions or comments for Ms. Bucciarelli, please feel free to raise your hand or just speak up. Seeing none, I'm going to open up for public comment, beginning with Anne. Is there anyone in Sacramento would like to present public comment?
Public comment in Sacramento.
Thank you, Anne. You sound a little quiet, just so you know. And then moderator, we are ready for public comment in WebEx. Sarah?
As a moderator and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access these features and submit their requests. All right, and seeing no requests for public comment, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you, Sarah. Ms. Bucciarelli, thank you again so much for your report.
You're welcome.
All right, we'll see you soon. All right, next agenda item is agenda item 10, presentation on implementation of the Drug Supply Chain Security Act and National Association of Boards of Pharmacy efforts. Members, as implementation of the Drug Supply Chain Security Act continues, I'd like to welcome back Josh Boland, Associate Executive Director, Government Affairs and Innovations with the National Association of Boards of Pharmacy. You may recall that Josh provided a presentation as part of the October 2022 board meeting. Can't believe that's already a year ago. Josh, thank you very much for coming back to provide additional information on the DSCSA, and activities undertaken by the National Association of Boards of Pharmacy to assist pharmacies and regulators with implementation. Josh, the floor is yours. Thank you for coming again.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. If I could ask the moderator, I have a few just updated slides that I'll certainly provide to the board after the fact. If possible, could I share my screen to work through slides?
Let me pass over presenter role, and then just be aware that when you're sharing your screen to just, make sure there's no notifications popping up that you don't want everyone to see.
Sure, sure. Is that coming through okay?
Yep.
Yes, it is.
Great. Very good. Thank you. Well, once again, I do appreciate the opportunity to provide the board with an update on DSCSA. Although the past year has flown by, quite a bit has happened. So I want to provide some updates to level set where things are with the DSCSA, and then also provide some updates on the other activities that NABP has been involved with over the course of the past 12 months. So just as a reminder for the board, the Drug Supply Chain Security Act, which Congress passed in 2013, has had this phased implementation over the course of the past 10 years. Some of the foundational things that happened early on during that 10-year period, called for lot level tracing to actually start to be able to have the transaction history, transaction information, transaction statement down to that lot level, and really viewing that as being a building block of moving toward this electronic and interoperable system that was to go into effect in November of this year. Other requirements such as ensuring that trading partners are only doing business with other authorized trading partners. That was a requirement that's been in place for almost 8 years now. Then moving into 2018, that was when manufacturers had to start the process of affixing serial numbers down to that saleable unit level, and then begin to track those serial numbers, conduct respond to product verifications if another trading partner requested information about that serialized product. Then moving forward as we've been working toward 2023, the thought process and really what the law required was that this serialized products down to the unit level, and then the transaction information that accompany those, that transaction information would actually move between trading partners in an electronic and interoperable manner. That was meant to go into effect on November 27th of this year. Now, as I recall providing the update last year, and then throughout what NABP has been working on over the course of the past couple of years, one of the things that we've learned is that really the entire supply chain isn't yet ready. I think NABP, going back in August of this year, actually provided comments to the FDA, sharing some of the learnings that we've had over the course of the past 2 years, and also identifying that if FDA took a strict enforcement approach on November 27th of this year, really that would halt the supply chain. It would lead to and make drug shortages even worse. And so what NABP advised at that time was that FDA looked to provide some level of a period for trading partners to continue to do the work necessary to come into compliance. And so we'll talk about what FDA ultimately decided in just a moment. So just to remind the board and kind of scale why it's important that the DSCSA is in place. Even just within the last 12 to 18 months, we have had instances of counterfeit products finding their way into pharmacies, finding their way into the hands of patients. And so this isn't, this is certainly not a new thing, but it is still an issue, and an issue that full implementation of the DSCSA will work toward correcting. So many of you may be familiar with the counterfeit HIV medications that were dispensed throughout the country, or not dispensed, but distributed throughout the country. And ultimately, these medications made their way into over 600 unique pharmacies across 36 states. So there was a significant impact. But the way they didn't just magically find their way in through the legitimate supply chain, there was actually a significant counterfeiting scheme that was behind these products finding their way into the supply chain. The majority of these, at least in this instance, there was a significant patient buyback program where HIV patients were approached by criminal elements to actually purchase either the full stock bottle, the full bottle with the medication in it, or just the bottle itself. And then those products or the bottles themselves would be cleansed, they would be cleaned, and then those criminals sold the products through a fly-by-night supplier who then sold them to a licensed wholesale drug distributor. And then the distributor would just distribute and sell those products out of the secondary market and into pharmacies, and they did so using a fake pedigree. Now, as the DSCSA comes into effect with the electronic and interoperable system, it's going to become a lot more challenging to fake a pedigree. But ultimately, this sort of underscores the fact that, criminal elements do exist. There are counterfeiters that are out there that are still trying to insert counterfeit products into the legitimate supply chain, and it is happening. So with that as terms of why the DSCSA is important, now let's get back to the implementation and where that stands ultimately. Now, in August of this year, on August 30th was when it was officially announced, the FDA announced a new compliance policy guidance document that would be released that established a 1-year stabilization period for implementing the electronic and interoperable system. So, as I said from the outset, from the top of the supply chain, many drug manufacturers are ready to comply and are, taking steps to do so and make sure they are in compliance by November of this year. Many distributors are ready, but there are also many manufacturers and distributors that are not. And then when you get down to the pharmacy level, that's the trading partner sector that still has the most work to do. And so, the reality here is that, yes, there's a stabilization period. What it means is the FDA is not going to, take action for non-compliance on these requirements that were set to go into effect in November of this year. However, what we saw with the previous counterfeiting case on those previous slides, that's still very, very illegal. And so from a Board of Pharmacy perspective, what we're encouraging boards to do is ensure that trading partners are doing what they're already supposed to be doing today. So, having processes to make sure they're only doing business with authorized trading partners. Ensuring that if they find a suspect or illegitimate product, what do they do to actually ensure that that product doesn't make its way back into the supply chain and ultimately to investigate that product. So, again, one of the key terms of art, I know that very often we use the term enforcement discretion. That is, FDA was very careful not to utilize that. That's why they're saying the stabilization period is meant for trading partners to continue to move progress along toward compliance, not stop. The last thing that anyone that's working on this issue in the supply chain wants, pharmacies, wholesalers, and manufacturers to do is to see this and think, okay, great, I've got another year to get ready. I don't need to do anything now. We would encourage all trading partners to continue to move forward and also encourage boards that when you're looking at where a trading partner is, while you wouldn't necessarily cite them or fine them for non-compliance for requirements that the FDA has already said there's going to be the stabilization period for, I think it's important for trading partners to at least be able to explain that they're making progress or show what they're doing to move toward that progress within the electronic and interoperable system. Now, to kind of cover, briefly some of the requirements that are already in place today, dispensers already have an obligation to make sure they're only doing business with authorized trading partners. So that means that they are only purchasing from wholesale distributors that, one, are appropriately licensed with the state, but two, have also reported their licenses into the FDA's repository. Those are the two things that a wholesaler has to do to be considered authorized. And dispensers need to have a process to make sure that their suppliers are actually authorized in accordance with the DSCSA. Also, having information in place and having product tracing information to know, how you accept prescription drugs into inventory and making sure that the necessary documentation is actually there in terms of the transaction history, transaction information, and transaction statement. And then finally, and I mentioned previously, having a process in place to ensure that you handle suspect and illegitimate products appropriately and that you have a process for investigating that suspect product. And there's actually really good FDA guidance on suspect and illegitimate products and what that actually means and how it's defined. NABP over the course of the past several years has had this program called the Verified Pharmacy Program. From the period of June 2018 to December of 2022, we actually conducted roughly 1,200 inspections across the country. And keep in mind, a VPP inspection, it's not an accreditation. It is more like a regulatory inspection where we're looking at specific areas of practice, but then also we'll check for baseline compliance with state and federal law. So there are actually questions on our inspection form that relate to DSCSA compliance when it comes to with what we're inspecting with these pharmacies. So here's some data that we found over the course of the past couple of years worth of inspections. So first, we found that 79% of pharmacies inspected do have a documented process for establishing their vendors of prescription drugs. So checking to make sure that those vendors are authorized trading partners. But what we found is that pharmacies aren't routinely checking those licenses, and they aren't routinely checking the FDA's wholesale distributor database. So it's one thing to have a policy and procedure in place, but if you're not following it, that doesn't get you where you need to be from a compliance perspective. In addition, we found that 52% of pharmacies don't actually routinely check the transaction information, transaction history, and transaction statement before accepting those products into inventory. And then finally, when we ask if there were a formal process in place for handling suspect and illegitimate product investigations, we found that 16% of pharmacies do not have a process in place to investigate, which is an improvement. But we also found that 8% of pharmacies that we've inspected have actually had to go forward with a suspect or illegitimate product investigation. So that just sort of gives you a sense of, across these 1,200 pharmacies, 8% of them have had to actually investigate a suspect or illegitimate product. So then as we move into more requirements for dispensers, I'm just going to cover kind of some recommendations and things that, from our observations and learnings over the course of the past couple of years, what we recommend that dispensers should be doing in terms of moving toward compliance. So first, when it comes to authorized trading partners, having detailed policies and procedures that speak to initial but then ongoing processes for verifying the licenses of their trading partners, that their trading partners have reported to the FDA database, but then also how frequently you're checking to see that a license is still valid, and documenting the last date that you checked and where you're going to check. So again, it's one thing to have policies and procedures in place, but if you can't prove that you're following them, you're going to fall short. From a product identification perspective, so verifying the NDC, lot number, expiration date, and the process by which you visually examine those products and examine the product to make sure that there's nothing that's suspect or illegitimate with that particular product. From a product tracing perspective, having documentation and having policies and procedures in place for how you will receive that transaction information from trading partners. Also how you'll store your transaction information. And then also if a regulator, state or federal, asks you for transaction information pursuant to an investigation, how do you handle that? What is the process for actually responding to a regulator's request for information? From a suspect and illegitimate product perspective, this speaks to the FDA guidance that I referenced earlier. If a dispenser identifies a suspect or illegitimate product, they have to have a process in place for quarantining that product, but then also conducting an investigation. So a couple of very important definitions here. If you have a reason to believe that a product is counterfeit, diverted, stolen, subject to a fraudulent transaction, intentionally adulterated, or otherwise appears unfit for distribution, that is a product that would be defined as being suspect. If you have reason to believe, that's what means that it's suspect. However, if you have credible evidence of those things, that is when it becomes an illegitimate product. In either case, you have to have a process for documenting that you've identified this product and then quarantining it until that issue is resolved, and either it can go back into the supply chain or it needs to stay and remain quarantined. And then the process of actually reaching out to the manufacturer to verify the legitimacy of those product identifiers, so serial number, lot number, expiration date, and the NDC/G10. And then if it is an illegitimate product, completing and submitting that FDA 3911 form. So again, having policies and procedures that really detail what to do if, even if there are only 8% of the pharmacies that we inspected that identified that they've had to conduct a suspect or illegitimate product investigation. When you think about how many pharmacies there are in the country, you extrapolate that out, that's thousands of pharmacies that are likely to have to conduct some level of suspect or illegitimate product investigation. So moving on, one of the questions we get asked very often from the pharmacy community, is, well, my wholesaler can just take care of all my compliance for me, right? And the answer to that is no. Not entirely. Now, your wholesaler can store transaction information for you. So dispensers don't necessarily have to purchase a solution to store all of their transaction information that's required under DSCSA. But the wholesaler can only store the information for the products that they sell you. So, wholesaler A can store the transaction information for the products they sold you, but they can't store the information for the products that wholesaler B sold you. So again, important to make that distinction and to know who is storing your transaction information. So if a regulator asks, that you have a process for going to get that. So again, wholesalers can't store transaction information for products sold by other wholesalers, and they also can't conduct your suspect and illegitimate product investigations for you. You as a dispenser have to do that on your own and have to go through and document that process. And then finally, pharmacies are not required to use an EPCIS or other sort of DSCSA solution provider to comply with the DSCSA. So what's next for pharmacies? One, we have documented, over and over, and we'll keep banging this drum, having those detailed policies and procedures that, step through the process for handling a given issue, but then also documenting how you're training your staff on that, and document that how you'll train them, but also the fact that you have trained them. And then the other key is, how will you prove or show that you're actually following those DSCSA requirements? So again, it's not enough to say, well, here's my procedure. It's being able to show, well, I check my authorized trading partners at this interval, and I go to this source, and here's the documentation of the last time I checked. So it's not just having the procedures, but also the documentation to back them up. Finally, making a determination of how you're going to store product tracing information, whether you're going to utilize your wholesaler or whether you're going to utilize your solution provider. And then how, as a dispenser, you would comply with product verification and product tracing requirements. And so we're going to get a little bit into this in terms of different ways that you could potentially do that. But again, these are things that pharmacies, with this additional time from the stabilization period, really beginning with those policies and procedures as a foundational first step, if you haven't started that work, is going to be critical. So now moving into the U.S. prescription drug supply chain. So one of the things that is unique, at least from a global perspective, about the U.S. prescription drug supply chain is that it is a decentralized system, meaning that there is no single source of data or truth. There is no one big database in the cloud or within federal government that is storing all of the transaction information. And so the implication of that is that each trading partner has to store their own transaction information. They have to send and receive serialized data and transaction information from their from their trading partners. So if you're a wholesaler, receiving that from the manufacturer and then documenting that you've sold that product down, to the dispenser level. So again, storing the serialized data, having a mechanism to send and receive it, and then finally responding to those requests from federal and state regulators as part of an investigation into a product. So think of it very much like the diagram shows on the screen. DSCSA, in effect, allows and requires each trading partner really to maintain sovereignty and control over their own serialized data. So one of the things that I also want to do is convey really the size and the scope of what we presently have, which is several 100,000 lots where we're tracking transaction information and transaction history, and then what we're moving toward. And so obviously this date has been we have the stabilization period that we're moving into. But if you think that roughly there are 4.5 billion units where transaction information is being traced today, at least down to, that the number of sales of products over the course of a year. So if you think about, at least during kind of a happy path, so to speak, there's at least going to be two transactions: the sale from the manufacturer to the wholesaler and the sale from the wholesaler to the pharmacy. So you take that 4.5 billion times 2, so then you have roughly 8 to 10 billion transactions just, in that normal sort of setup. And then if you think there are actually 16 to 20 billion instances of TI, and so that's because each trading partner has to keep a record. So you have multiple, well, you may only have 2 transactions. Everybody's responsible for keeping track of those transactions themselves. So again, that number doubles in terms of the volume that we're looking at. And then you take that times 6, because you're required to record and store those records for a period of 6 years. So ultimately, that's 100 billion instances of transaction information that, just for a 1 year period. So now, this is where we are today in terms of just, the amount and the volume of information that's being, that's being tracked, so to speak. And this is where we're going. 10,000 to 20,000 times as many DSCSA instances and records that are going to be recorded as we move toward this electronic and interoperable system. And many trading partners are already, engaging in this level of detail and moving toward higher volumes of transactions. But I think what this does is it sort of conveys the complexity of how much data is going to be moving through the supply chain. And then you think back as a regulator. If you, a board of pharmacy inspector, or the FDA or any regulator, if you have to conduct an investigation into a suspect or illegitimate product, you can see the volume of information that you have to you don't have to sift through billions, but you have to be able to find the person that has the transaction information. And so because the supply chain is decentralized, NABPs look to create a tool that would enable state boards of pharmacy, as well as other regulatory bodies that regulate the prescription drug supply chain, giving them the tools necessary to communicate with trading partners to gather that transaction information. So to be able to find the right party and the right transaction information in here is really key to understanding who the trading partners are. And so one of the things we identified is that regulators need those tools, but we've also discovered that trading partners may need those tools as well. And so what compounds this is that there is no single directory to connect the prescription drug supply chain. And that's what NABP has been working on over the course of the past couple of years. It's, could we actually create a mechanism that would enable the state regulatory community, but then also others, to be able to use a directory, and in this case, we're referring to our directory as Pulse by NABP, to actually identify the right trading partner and request that transaction information so you can understand the prior ownership history of a given product. And so this just gives you a visual, going back to the information flow that we showed, that I showed a few minutes ago. This shows how a regulator would utilize Pulse and the platform to be able to identify the right trading partner and then, actually gather transaction information to rebuild that prior ownership history. The thought process here is that a state regulator would be, a state inspector would be out in the field. And if they identified something that was either diverted or they believed to be suspect, they could scan the 2D barcode on the product and then could actually utilize Pulse to identify, who the manufacturer is, and then also identify the other trading partners so you could rebuild that transaction history. Much in the same way that today, a regulator could go and request the paper transaction history from a pharmacy and see who previously owned that. The difference here is that the paper transaction history, that was what was counterfeited in the case that I showed you all earlier. So as we move toward this electronic and interoperable system, the paper goes away, that sunsets, which means that having a tool to be able to gather that information is going to become important as part of suspect and illegitimate product investigations for state regulators. And so how did we get here? We've been working on this for multiple years at this point. And, as an association, we've been very deliberate about, one, involving the state boards of pharmacy, but in also involving members of the supply chain to gather information and really try to understand if NABP were to move forward with something, what would it look like? How would it need to function? And so we've conducted a number of pilots and prototypes and proofs of concept to really gather those requirements from our state board of pharmacy members, but then also from the supply chain itself as we've been moving forward with launching Pulse. To give some perspective, this gives you an idea of the entities that were involved in our tracing pilot from earlier this year. So we had 10 boards of pharmacy that were participating. And actually, California participated in the original pilot that we did back at the beginning of 2022. We've had large and small manufacturers, distributors, and dispensers participating, the solution provider community that are helping support trading partner compliance with DSCSA. They're also widely involved. So we've tried to really have a open and transparent process to gather these requirements, and that's really what's informed how we're going about building and ultimately launching the Pulse platform. And so there are two ways to think about Pulse. First, it is establishing that digital directory for the entire prescription drug supply chain. So that enables, trading partners to have confidence that they're securely exchanging and sharing data, but then also it allows them to help, because the system's decentralized, allows them to maintain that sovereignty and control over their data. But it's also, more than anything, a communication platform. So if we have this directory, then it's providing the tools necessary for regulators, but then also trading partners to be able to communicate with each other, to exchange contact information, to request product tracing or ownership information. Really key to that is to have this directory and then a set of integration and communication tools on top of that. So the other point to be made here is that as we've gotten into this work over the course of the past year plus, one of the things, past couple of years, one of the other things we identified is that the small dispenser community in particular lacks the tools to actually conduct product verification and product trace, which are things they're going to need to do if they investigate suspect and illegitimate products. The other reality is that with that counterfeiting event we saw earlier, those pharmacies were targeted by a wholesale distributor, giving them an offer that was actually too good to be true. And so if you think about that, it's really the small dispenser community that needs the tools provided under DSCSA to be able to trace a product, to be able to verify a product's identity, because they're the ones that are most often targeted by counterfeiters and criminals. So because of that, NABP's built out this digital directory. We're building these communication tools for our members, but we're also offering these to the dispenser community at no cost. We think it's incredibly important that we have wide participation in this electronic and interoperable system. And so because of that, it's within our public health mission and squarely focuses on, the patient safety aspects of that, for us to provide these tools at no cost to the dispenser community, as well as providing them at no cost to the regulatory community as well. So finally, a few things on what boards should be doing to prepare. One of the things that came about last year was FDA published some rules that would set out the licensing requirements or the national licensing standards, and that was part of the DSCSA. That was an open comment period. Those comments were due in September of 2022. And now FDA has actually said that their current target goal for publishing those national licensing standards is April of 2025. Now, once they publish a final rule, if they were to hit that April 2025 date, the rules actually wouldn't go into effect until April of 2027. The reason I mention that now is that really the boards have time. They don't need to worry about the FDA rapidly publishing a final rule. They've already said what that target is going to be on their unified agenda. So the boards can also take advantage of that time, as well as the stabilization period, to assess your current wholesaler and 3PL laws, see if there are some, ways to remove points of friction, if necessary, while you're waiting on the national licensing standards. Evaluating your current inspection reports for wholesalers, 3PLs, but then also for dispensers to make sure that you have those baseline items that dispensers need to do to comply today, even before that electronic and interoperable system will become fully enforced next year. Also, thinking about how you're communicating any DSCSA related changes to your regulated population. So trying to come up with uniform sets for communication for what states can or for what trading partners should be doing to move toward DSCSA compliance. NABP is also going to be developing kind of some tools that boards can use in helping shape that communication to ensure that there's a glossary of terms that dispensers will need to know and understand, and so trying to provide some of those tools for states to help aid you in educating your regulated populations. And then finally, NABP is continuing to hold a number of educational sessions for trading partners and regulators. And we would, encourage, any number of representatives, either from the audience or from the California Board of Pharmacy, staff, to participate in those sessions and contribute as well, because we're always looking for qualified and educated speakers to help us with that education. So the final two slides are just some of the different terms of art and more of just a reference point for the board and for the audience on commonly used terms within DSCSA. And then finally, we also have some different DSCSA links and reference sites that can be utilized in order to just kind of have a good set of resources at your disposal. Two of the ones that we're most proud of and involved in clearly, one is DSCSA.pharmacy. That is a collaborative effort on the part of a number of pharmacy and trade associations to come up with a trusted source for education around DSCSA. There are a number of free webinars and other tools and training materials that are available on that site. It's very much targeted toward the dispenser community, but I think boards may find some of that useful as well. And then finally, our Pulse.pharmacy website. So just any that haven't signed up already, we would encourage you to sign up just to stay up to date on what NABP is working on from a Pulse perspective. We're going to continue discussions with the board staff as well on how Pulse can potentially help support investigative efforts on a go-forward basis. And we're also looking at some other opportunities where NABP can bring some of our resources and subject matter experts to California, to help provide some training, but then also just engage and ensure that what we're working on as an association is best suited to meet the needs of the boards across the country. So with that, I know I covered a lot. Just because of the setup, I wasn't able to tell if there were questions that came in from the board. So I will pause now, and I'm happy to defer back to the chairman, and we can field questions or whatever the board thinks is best.
Thank you, Mr. Boland. I really appreciate it. I'm going to open up for members for comments or questions. I think we're going to have a few. KK, I see your hand is raised, but before I go to you, can I just ask a couple questions on the this may not be a question for you, but I'm just wondering, we are anecdotally, maybe objectively noticing some increases in drug shortages. Do you know, is this DSCSA has any possible contribution to that? You may not be able to answer, but just a question.
I can provide a little bit of perspective. So I think one of the things that NABP is very, very happy and supportive of the FDA's decision to not move forward with enforcement, because we believe that had they moved forward with a strict enforcement of DSCSA, you would see the drug shortage situation become much worse. I have not heard that compliance with DSCSA requirements to this point are necessarily leading to drug shortages. I think there are other, potential factors that weigh in there. And again, that is, to your point, that is a much broader discussion. But, in terms of implementation of DSCSA requirements, I'm not hearing that as a direct, cause of drug shortages, at least at this stage.
Thank you, Josh. And then also, this was not main part of your presentation, but you did mention about the national wholesaler standards. I think we as a board are deeply concerned of that. We wrote a very clear and convincing letter to the FDA when it was a comment period. It feels like that was a while ago already. You probably don't know, but do you know where they're leaning toward?
Yeah.
As far as you know, of this ceiling floor concept. I mean, I think we are okay with this floor, but the ceiling concept is where we're really concerned about from our perspective, which we've submitted our letter to you, not to you, but to the FDA.
Sure. And so, one, I want to applaud California for, providing comment back. And one of the other, points of interest, we actually had 18 states that provided comments on the national licensing standards. That's a really high percentage, at least in terms of, states engaging and providing comments on a federal regulation. That was roughly 20% of the comments that were submitted. So I think the FDA has heard loud and clear from states that there needs to be a lot of clarity on really how high the ceiling is and how low the floor is, and how much room there is for states to work within those constructs, right? So I do think, one, the states have been very clear in needing to have a lot of clarity about that. I do not believe that I don't believe at this stage that the FDA appears to be focused on the administrative types of processes. So, for example, like when you're focused on, what type of renewal cycle, or is that an annual renewal? Is it biannual? Is it on an anniversary date? How you dole out discipline in a given state. So while there were some of those things addressed, broadly within the proposed rule, I do think the FDA recognizes that there will need to be more flexibility to allow states to regulate within that construct. The other point that I would make, and this, whether this helps or allays any concerns, the DSCSA did not call for identical licensing standards from the national licensing standards to what the states would have to adhere to. In fact, Congress specifically rejected earlier drafts that worked toward an identical type of approach. So based on that fact and what we believe Congress's intent was at that time, we do think there is going to be some flexibility. I also think the boards have time. The fact that it was published on the unified agenda is their goal of being published in April of 2025. So that does give a good amount of time from between now and that date, if the FDA hits that date, from publishing a final rule.
Okay. Thank you, Josh. And one last question about the Pulse. The Pulse is Pulse considered a solution provider, or is that not really the case?
Yeah, I think the way that we're viewing it is that, when we started into the space, no one was really talking about how to address what the state regulatory community would need. So I think as we've gone forward with this, we viewed it as really building out a set of tools that our member boards, that states can use as a means of helping, complete suspect and illegitimate product investigations. But I think we've also, as we got into it, realized, like I mentioned earlier, the dispenser community may not be able to or can't afford to purchase a specific solution in order to move forward and meet their compliance obligations under DSCSA. So what we're viewing that as being sort of hopefully a set of tools that can help simplify compliance for the dispenser community. So, term of art wise, whether we're a solution provider or not, we're providing these tools at no cost. And because we think it's important that the regulatory community, but then also the dispenser community, has those accessible tools to help protect patients.
Okay, thank you, Josh. All right, thank you for answering all the questions. KK, go ahead.
Thank you, Josh. It was really very detailed presentation. Appreciate that. I have a question, and again, you don't have to answer it right away, but I wasn't really clear about a couple of things. The inter-pharmacy transfers, where those liability lies, and second thing, I think I saw in slides about repackagers. So are they really treated as a manufacturer, or they will have a separate standards?
Yeah, so there are a limited set of parties that are defined within the DSCSA: manufacturers, repackagers, wholesalers, third-party logistics providers, and dispensers. And dispensers is inclusive of pharmacies, but then also other dispensing locations. So, repackagers are, regulated under the DSCSA, and will have those obligations in some of the same ways that a manufacturer would. Going to your pharmacy to pharmacy transfer question. So, another key point of emphasis is that DSCSA is actually a change of ownership law in terms of the product. It is not a physical movement of product law. So when you talk about a change of ownership, that is what triggers a transaction under the DSCSA, and that is what requires there to be documentation that that transaction has occurred. So if you're talking about a pharmacy to pharmacy transfer within a set of pharmacies that are under common ownership, that is not considered a transaction under the DSCSA. If you're talking about a hospital system moving product within that system, as long as there is not a change of ownership, it is not considered to be, by and large, it's not considered to be a transaction under DSCSA. One of the questions that comes up is whether or not a pharmacy can sell a product to another pharmacy where there isn't common ownership. And there are exemptions that mean that you can make that transfer as long as it is for use to meet a specific patient need. So that's the distinction. It can't be for anticipatory purposes. It has to be for a specific patient need. Otherwise, that triggers a transaction. And that is based on at least the current guidance that has come out from the FDA. The FDA could update that between now and over the course of the next 12 months. But those are kind of the common questions we get in terms of, pharmacy to pharmacy transfers.
Thank you. And last question, I promise. That does not change pharmacy's classification, right? So the sending pharmacy still remains a pharmacy as far as classification of transaction is concerned. Doesn't become a repackager or distributor, correct?
So that is an excellent follow-up question. So the distinction here is if it is under common ownership and control and you're making that transfer that way, that pharmacy is not conducting a wholesale distribution. If they are actually selling to another pharmacy and selling beyond that, for specific patient need, then that becomes a wholesale distribution. It is not exempted in that instance. So as long as it's following under those exemptions that are laid out under DSCSA, and in particular for this one that meets a specific patient need, then it is not a wholesale distribution and therefore doesn't trigger the transaction information needing to be passed and does not trigger the requirement to become licensed as a wholesaler.
Thank you, sir. I do have a follow-up question, but I will stop right now.
That's okay, KK. You're more than welcome to ask.
That's okay. We'll set it in the email just for the time purpose.
And I'll put my contact information into the chat. That way, if there are follow-up questions, happy to answer those as well.
All right. And go ahead, Renee.
Hi, this is Renee Barker. Thanks, Josh, for the overview of very detailed information. I'm just wondering, I know there's a, kind of discussion about the states and getting involved. Since you said that the smaller community pharmacies are at the greatest risk for counterfeit meds, and, this plan is helping to avoid diversion like that. And so I'm just not familiar because I work more in a hospital system setting, but for the dispenser community, as you say, if this pulse, by the NABP, is just a set of very accessible tools for use, what type of outreach has NABP done for the smaller community? They're busy. We all know, right? They're busy. There's so much to keep up with, and this is very complex. So anyway, just wondering if you can speak a little bit to that, for that support for that contingent of pharmacies.
Sure. So several things. One, yes, we are, to the extent we're able and resource wise, doing a lot of messaging and promotion and collaboration with the organizations that represent the community pharmacy, the small pharmacy community. So NCPA, NASPA, and others, and trying to work to message through them. We have given a number of presentations at State Pharmacy Association meetings. We're attending and providing presentations at other trade shows and places where the independent community pharmacy tends to gather. But more broadly, I mean, we are also working with boards to provide that communication out to their regulated population, since it's something that's not being provided and not a cost associated with it. It's not as commercial, as some other things might be. And so I think from our perspective, we're going to pursue all avenues, working through the trade associations and professional associations, but then also working with the boards to message out to the extent that boards are able to help support that.
That sounds great. Thank you so much again.
Thank you, Renee. Thank you, Josh. Any other member questions? I'm sure we will have more questions for you, Josh, as we go on. This is a complex topic. Seems simple, but very complex in details. I really appreciate it. And lastly, we do open up for public comment. So as a quick reminder, public comment is not intended to be a question and answer session, but if you are comfortable answering, please feel free to do so. So with that, and is there any public comment in Sacramento?
No public comment in Sacramento.
Thank you, Anne. And Sarah, we're going to open up for public comment in WebEx.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access these features and submit their requests. All right, and seeing no requests for public comment, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much again, Josh. Really appreciate it, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you soon. All right, everyone.
And I
Go ahead,
couldn't, apologies, I couldn't figure out how to work the chat, but my email address is jbolin@nabp.pharmacy. If there are other questions or follow-ups that we can answer. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and we will certainly be in touch.
Thank you. I know Anne has your email, so if anything, we can ask Anne for your contact information. We'll be bothering you for sure. Okay, members, we're moving on to the next agenda item. However, we've been at it for about an hour, so I think this is a good time for a quick 10-minute break. So we'll take 10-minute break, and we'll come back at 10:15. See you soon, 10:15. Okay, it's 10:15. Hopefully everyone's back. I'll take a quick roll call. Jesse, are you back?
I'm here.
Hi, Jesse. Renee?
Hello, present.
Hi, Renee. Indira?
I'm here.
Hi, Indira. Jose?
Present.
KK?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Jig?
I'm here, son.
Hi, Jig. Maria? Maria? Maria may not be back. Nicole?
Yeah.
Hi, Nicole and Jason.
I'm here, Sung.
Hi, Jason, and I'm here. Maria, are you back? You might just gotten a little distracted, so we'll get started. Next agenda item is 11, presentation on Senate Bill 544. Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act, teleconferencing, and consideration of potential changes to board member procedure manual. Oh, there's Maria. Hi, Maria. Could you just verbally say you're here so that Debbie can record you being here? Oh, you're muted, but I can see you.
I'm back. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Members will now receive a presentation from our counsel, Corinne Gardner, on the upcoming changes established in Senate Bill 544. Following the presentation, we'll discuss the policy issue raised in the meeting materials. Corinne, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. So we're just going to run through kind of a summary and overview of some of the additional teleconference meeting options and flexibilities that were added to the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act by SB 544. Next slide, please. So the obligatory disclaimer, we're just doing a overview and summary of some of the new rules that were put into SB 544, which makes certain changes to the teleconference meeting provisions of the Open Meeting Act effective January 1st of next year. And as always, please consult the bill for the full text. Next slide, please. Okay, so the first provision we're going to cover, this was added by Section 1 of SB 544, a new option for all state bodies. This will be Government Code Section 11123.2. So under this option, and this is something that's available for full board meetings, such as the one we're conducting today, at least one member must be physically present at each publicly accessible location, and then a majority of members, so a quorum, must be physically present at the same publicly accessible location. So you can have more than one publicly accessible location, but you have to have a quorum physically present at one of those locations. Members above a majority, however, can participate remotely from private non-public sites. And members at private non-public sites must disclose if other people age 18 or older are present in the room with them and the general nature of the relationship. So that's a new rule that is included. Next slide, please. So again, just talking about board member participation. A member participating remotely from a private non-public site can be counted toward the majority if that member has a need related to a physical or mental disability and also notifies the state body at the earliest opportunity possible, including at the start of the meeting. And if a member so notifies the state body, there's a requirement that the body take action to approve that exception and request a general description of the circumstances relating to the member's need to participate remotely. And there are some restrictions in the bill about, the description that needs to be provided, making sure that, there's no disclosure of confidential medical information or anything of that sort. Next slide, please. This is, again, a new rule that we wanted to make sure that all the board members were aware of, that all members must visibly appear on camera during the open portion of the meeting. Some exceptions put on that in the bill are that appearance on camera is not required when it's technologically impracticable, which includes but is not limited to, for example, when there's a lack of reliable internet connectivity that would be remedied by eliminating video, or when the visual display of meeting information materials or other speakers requires that the member's visual appearance cease. Next slide, please. And again, a member who doesn't appear on camera due to challenges with internet connectivity must announce the reason for their non-appearance when they turn off their camera. Next slide, please. Okay, as far as public participation under this new meeting option 11123.2, there must be a way for the public to attend and participate virtually in the meeting, so telephonically or by WebEx or Zoom. The public must also be able to attend at the publicly accessible teleconference sites. And the open portion of the meeting must be both audible and visible at the publicly accessible teleconference sites. Next slide, please. Here, just to run through some new requirements put on as far as adjournment. So upon discovering that a means of remote public access and participation has failed during a meeting and cannot be restored, the state body must adjourn the meeting and provide notice of the adjournment on the website and by email to any person who has requested notice of meetings. And then if a meeting will be adjourned and reconvened on the same day, further notice must be provided by an automated message on a telephone line posted on the agenda, website, or by similar means that will communicate when the body intends to reconvene the meeting and how the members of the public may hear audio of the meeting or observe it. Next slide, please. Okay, and now we're going to talk about another new option that was put into the bill for advisory bodies only, and this is actually amended section 11123.5, so amended as of January 1st. Under this option, there must be at least one publicly accessible site where the public can attend and participate in the meeting. In this case, you don't have to have members present at the site, board members that is, but you have to have at least one staff member present at that site. And then all advisory body members, so all committee members, can participate remotely from private or non-public locations. There is a requirement that a notice be provided to identify the advisory body members who will be participating from private non-public sites. And to satisfy this, if the requirement is actually at least 24 hours before the meeting, you have to provide this notice, but you can also include it in the normal 10-day meeting notice. And then members participating from private non-public sites must be listed in the meeting minutes as well. Next slide, please. Again, we've got camera requirements that are built into this section. So all advisory body members must visibly appear on camera during the open portion of the meeting. And again, those same exceptions for appearance on camera not being required when there's a technological impracticability, including, for example, the lack of reliable internet connectivity that you could fix by turning off your camera, or when the visual display of the meeting information or materials requires the appearance to cease. Next slide, please. And similarly, as the 11123.2 we talked about a moment ago, a member who doesn't appear on camera due to challenges with internet connectivity must make that announcement when they turn off their camera. Next slide, please. As far as public participation in these advisory meetings, there must be a way for the public to remotely access the meeting. And again, the public must be able to attend and participate at least one publicly accessible site. Next slide, please. And then again, under this option, we've got the same requirements for adjournment. So if there, upon discovering that a means of remote access has failed during a meeting, you have to adjourn and provide that notice on the website and by email to any person that has requested notice of meetings. And again, if the meeting will be adjourned and reconvened on the same day, further notice must be provided by that automated message on a telephone line or by a similar means that will communicate to the public when the advisory body intends to reconvene and how the public can join that meeting. Next slide, please. And in conclusion, just a reminder that, again, the traditional meeting options under Bagley-Keene are still available. So summarizing those, the traditional in-person single location meeting where a majority of members are gathered together at one publicly accessible site. You don't have anyone, no members participating remotely. And under this traditional meeting option, there is technically no requirement to allow remote public participation, but certainly that can be an option if the board, decides to do that. And then on the right-hand side, the traditional teleconference meeting provisions, which will still be in section 11123 subdivision B, where you have members at different publicly accessible locations connected by phone or WebEx. And again, under that option, since all of the meeting locations are publicly accessible, there's technically no requirement to allow for remote public participation, but of course, the board can provide that if they desire to. And with that, next slide, please. That's all I got for you. So happy to answer any questions from members.
Hi, this is Nicole. I had a question. Is do we have to choose one for all the time, or is it optional to change it up for different meetings?
I mean, under the statute, all of these options are available for any meeting. I mean, except for, the option that only applies to advisory committee meetings.
Right.
But this is going to be a topic, that will be discussed momentarily. So.
Sure. And then my other question was, you had mentioned that there does have to be a disclosure if someone has a disability of the need to be at home, but that you don't have to give, personal medical information. So what kind of disclosure would that be? Just like, I have a mobility issue. I have
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what the statute says. The body shall not require the member to provide a general description that exceeds 20 words or to disclose any medical diagnosis or disability or any personal medical information that's exempt under existing law, such as under the Confidentiality of Medical Information Act. So I think it would be, whatever the member is comfortable disclosing, but you're not required to go into detail.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, guys. I didn't know I was muted and I didn't unmute myself. So
I was wondering
anyway,
about that.
thank you. Thank you, Corinne, for your presentation. As we open up for our discussion, I want to thank you all for your just such dedication to the board. We are a very active board working diligently to protect consumers with policy related to work being done in numerous public committees and board meetings each year. The dedication demonstrated by each of you is truly commendable. So thank you. So the changes, I think I'm gonna just proceed because as we discuss, I think it's best that we kind of ask Corinne as we proceed through. So as we dissect through this topic. So changes in Senate Bill SB 544, although as it is temporary only through the January 1st of 2026. So it's for the next 2 years. I believe we have the potential to ease some of the constraints some of us may have faced at times to participating meetings, especially during those gaps where we had to travel in person. So I'm hopeful that the questions detailed in the meeting materials will allow us to thoughtfully consider if we should develop interim policy on the best means by which to convene meetings during this period. I'd like to highlight that some of the challenges with COVID-19 require the board to pivot some operations to allow for continuation of services and meetings. We learned through this process that the board and members of the public are very adept at convening meetings via WebEx. The level of participation from members of the public has also significantly increased with the transition to WebEx meetings. Having shared summary comments, I'd like to open up the discussion on the first question posed in the meeting materials. So first question is, should the board I'm sorry for so many words in there. The bigger question, I guess, is should the board transition all meetings of committees to teleconference until January 1st of 2026? Now, remember that committees are considered advisory bodies, and I'm not giving any legal interpretation. This is confirmed by our counsel. Committees are confirmed to be functioning as advisory bodies under section 11123.5, 11123.5. And for me, I believe such transition is appropriate. Such a transition would reduce costs for the board and members of the public by allowing for full participation via WebEx. As required by the statute, the board staff would be present at a public location in Sacramento, just like how we're doing today. So the way that I structure the meeting today is kind of envisioning a future maybe is what it's like. So we wanted to open up opportunity for staff to be present at the board hearing room. So we don't have to already, but we're kind of doing that in lieu of SB 544, and just to be fully transparent to the public that there is a location in Sacramento for members of the public to participate. So with that, Jason, I see your hand is raised, and Jake, your hand is raised. So go ahead.
So
Jason.
do we need a motion to go forward with this? I would say for reasons already stated by you, that at the committee level, remote meeting is appropriate. And I'd be happy to take a motion if that's necessary to move forward.
Thank you, Jason. That we may have a gigantic motion at the end if you're so kind enough to consider that at the end of our discussion. If we
Great.
don't have an agreement, maybe we will make a interim policy motion on that just for specific to this. If we are in agreement in some ways, there may be an opportunity for big motion at the end. So we'll proceed on that with the discussion. So Jig, your comments?
I think Jason touched on it, so I'll just wait for going through the entire thing and then we can
Okay.
make amendment if we need to.
Sounds good. And then Maria?
My comment is based mostly on some of the logistical issues that occur at both our committee and board meetings, and I would like to include that in this discussion also. And that's the last, oftentimes members of the public submit documentation letters very late, that we don't have a chance to review them before the meeting. And so especially if we're going to be meeting remotely, we really need to get those materials early enough. Otherwise, it may not be possible for everyone, including the public, to read them in advance. And so if we do have a motion, I'd like to have some sort of policy discussion about, materials have to be turned in like 72 hours or 48 hours. We still get letters submitted the night before, and that's difficult, and it'll be also difficult for remote-based meetings.
Maria, excellent point. Thank you for bringing that up. I was contemplating that, and I think that we could definitely include that. I mean, obviously, in those circumstances that members of the public hopefully can participate and verbally provide information, but I would be really open to including that and saying at least 72 hours or something like that. But we'll consider as we proceed. And then Jose?
Yeah, so the question is that you posted, should this transition occur for committee meetings to teleconference? And I would say yes, that would be my response. Just for, establishing quorum, that's going to help. And also, just inclusivity, if we're going to do it via Zoom or WebEx, just more public participation will be key. There's many times where the public can't, travel all the way to Sacramento. So I think that's a good option for us to have. So my answer would be yes in response to that question.
Thank you, Jose. All right. The first question was easy. Moving to the second question. Should the board transition to a board meeting model that allows for some members to participate remotely from a private, non-public location if a quorum of the board is present at a single publicly accessible location? So this is where it gets a little tricky. I agree the transition is appropriate. I believe such an approach would allow for equal participation for members, including members that could not otherwise participate because of the need to travel or attend in person. So this is where you all might see Corinne's a little assistance. This is a new section 11123.2 regarding full board meeting. Now, the way that the language is written is confirmed by our council. If we are utilizing this for a full board meeting, we have to have 7 people in one room, and anything above can participate remotely. Now, a person who is described in that exemption section Corinne mentioned about describing 20 words or less of the need to not be able to participate in person, that person can count as a quorum if that cause exists. Not saying it so eloquently, I'm sorry, I'm not a lawyer. So that is where we are. So with that, Corinne, if you want to add anything to set the tone, this is regarding full board meeting. 7 people has to be in the room, anyone above. So we might have to have some discussion of who should be expected to be in the room. Can it be more local members, or can it be as we go on? with discussions. Maybe it's best that we don't set such a strict policy on it so that we have more nimbleness as we plan for meetings. We can see who can and cannot travel. Do we have 7 people? So, Corinne, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that. So the way that the law reads, yes, a majority of members must be physically present at the same publicly accessible location, but the exception to that is, you could have 6 members present at the same publicly accessible location and, 1 member who is participating remotely, and that person would still count toward the majority as long as those the exceptions are met, a need related to a disability and notifying the state body of the need to participate remotely.
And Corinne, not to put you on the spot, I apologize. I'm sorry. I did ask you this, so I feel not bad putting you on the spot here. For a case where I say maybe the day before or the day before the meeting, I am coming down with a cold and I do not want to travel because I may put people at risk of spreading my illness, but I am not feeling terribly, where to the point I feel that I can actually participate in a meeting. I just don't want to expose myself to the public. In those circumstances, in your opinion, would that person be able to participate remotely?
And count toward the majority? Is that
And
what you're
count
saying?
toward majority, yes.
Yeah, so again, the way that the law reads, you have to,
Disability is a tricky
you have
word.
to, yeah, you have to meet these following conditions. That the member has a need related to a physical or mental disability, as those terms are defined in other sections of the government code. I do believe that, physical disability includes a bodily illness that would prevent you from being able to travel, or a communicable disease. Again, the second requirement is notification to the state body at the earliest opportunity possible. So if it wasn't until the day before when you realized that you had this illness, that would still come under the exception.
Okay. Nicole, your hand is raised, and then Maria.
Hi, thanks, Sung. I'm choosing to disclose this myself, but want to highly advocate for this option, as I unfortunately became chronically ill, and it has left me with mobility issues. Shortly after I joined the Board of Pharmacy about 2 years ago, I am not able to drive any longer, and I am not able to travel as a result. So my position on the board has been in flux because of all of these rules, and this rule will allow me to continue and to participate. And I was very I wish they had taken it a little further, but I'm glad that they were willing to do this, because I was very I don't know what the right word is. It felt very ableist, that even though I'm perfectly capable of participating in the board and have for several years, I might not be able to, simply because I have a physical disability. So I understand that there will not necessarily be equity in this, and that some people have to go in person, but I am hoping that this is something that we are willing to do so that I can continue to participate. That being said, I have been able to attend when we've done a local Southern California position as well. So I'm also willing to do that if that's the better option for some meetings, but I am hoping we will consider this. So thank you.
Thank you, Nicole, for sharing. And I really appreciate you sharing that with us. Just to add a side comment, I know during those gaps we had to do these southern, northern locations. I just really prefer to not have to do that. One, I don't believe that really creates a good equitable participation from the public. Having 4 or 5 locations, not only me acting like a sports broadcaster calling all these locations, but beside that, it seems to me that this doesn't create enough well-course communication among members. I think it's either all members in one room and few members remote. I think that works, but I think having like 3-4 locations, that may only work in emergency situations or we have a few agenda items, but coursing through such detailed policy questions in that avenue, I just personally don't think that should be our primary option. So that's just my opinion. So I think this option gives us some opportunity to land somewhere in the middle where we can have majority of people in one room when we're contemplating discussion of thorough nature, and a few members hopefully can participate that cannot travel or that is, able to at least join remotely and can participate. So I think this is a good option. With that, Maria, I'll go to you next, and then KK, and then Jake.
Thank you. And thank you, Nicole, for adding some context to the discussion. I was really concerned about this this section or this opportunity because we've had problems with quorums in the past, and sometimes if people are planning to come, and I felt a little bit better when you said it was even an urgent illness could qualify. But I'm wondering, is there, am I not understanding, isn't there a third option? Or isn't there an option where someone who is unable to travel because of a documented reason would be an exemption? I'm trying to read through Corinne's notes here, where we could have meetings. I know what you said, you don't want to have them all over the place in different locations, but I'm just trying to balance the risk of, certainly the primary goal is to have everyone participate. That's first. But I'm also trying to balance the risk of having so many people in one location. We found that that's already difficult unless everyone is really good about turning in a illness reason or has a documented reason, so it's an ongoing issue. We could, we at one point we canceled a meeting. Actually, we've canceled 2 meetings over the years where people at the last minute something changed. One person was a confusion. They didn't show up at the posted site because they didn't realize they were supposed to. There was confusion. And, so I certainly don't want us to have canceled meetings or to slow down the work of the board because of the quorum, but that's, I think it needs to be equally balanced with access. And so I'm looking for, Corinne, isn't there, I'm trying to look in here your exceptions. Isn't there also an exception for individuals who, like Nicole shared, that they would be an exception and be able to be at a private location while others are at public locations throughout the state?
That's the exception that we're talking about.
But I'm talking also about not having one location where everyone's together, but you have 3 public locations, let's say.
Okay, and that was what President O was referring to. And again, in the last slide, that's an option that already exists under Bagley-Keene. That's 11123 subdivision B. That's the traditional teleconference meeting provision. This is one that was utilized, I think, in August, where, there were, I don't remember how many, 4 or 5 different publicly accessible locations throughout the state where board members were present at each of those locations, and the public could come to each of those locations if they so chose. So,
but that does not include a board member being at a private location.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay,
correct.
so that's what I was asking, is
Yes.
having one board member or a couple board members at a private location and having disparate public locations. That's not an option.
Not an
Correct.
option. Yeah.
Okay.
That's exactly crux
Well, and that's,
of
and that's now, I appreciate that we have a current example instead of us trying to picture what could happen in the future. And so it's a better conversation rather than saying in the future this could happen, because it's not the future, it's now.
And again, just to clarify, so under new section 11123.2, as long as you have a majority of the members present at the same physical location, you can have other members participating from remote, non-publicly accessible locations, and they don't have to, in that case, if it's above a majority, those members participating remotely don't have to have a reason,
that's
a
the challenge.
disability related reason.
Yeah.
Right, and that's the challenge, is that we often don't have a quorum. I mean, maybe we will now that we have we don't have so many vacancies.
Yeah.
So I would suggest that we don't pick one, that we have a toolkit of choices.
Great point, Maria. And actually, that brings me to another thought, which I think what I'm hoping is in my head, what I was thinking with the next topic that we're going to be discussing, what I'm thinking, hopefully 4 times a year, we can have 7 people gather in one location is the kind of a thinking I have. And so we'll then move on to the next question soon, but I'll have Jake and KK go. KK, did you have something? I know you raised your hand, but then you lowered it. So go ahead.
Yeah, you registered me, so I lowered it. But you know, I'm getting a little confused. So just little clarity for for the purpose of quorum. Let's say there's a committee meeting, 7 people. So
Not
unless
committee. No committee. This is for the full board.
okay, full board. Sorry,
Yeah.
that's a part of confusion. Let's say if we have a meeting, so we must have a quorum present in person at 1 or 2 locations, and then only 1, 2 members can work from home. Is that what I'm hearing?
Corinne, go ahead. Yep. Because
So yes, so the default rule under 11123.2, and again, this applies to full board meetings. The default would be that you have a quorum present at the same physical, publicly accessible location.
Okay.
However, you can, if you have a member that has, you know, a physical or mental disability, that person can be counted toward the majority.
Okay. Okay. So that person will be part of quorum. If I have a flu that day, and I decided not to give it to you, I will be counted towards the quorum. I hearing that correctly?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. That's all.
all right, KK. Jake?
Thank you, Sang. I had a couple clarifying questions. One, if out of all the members we have, if everybody wants to go to physical location, then that's not like you can't go if we have majority, right? So if everybody's willing to go, we
Hunky-dory.
can go.
Absolutely. That is absolutely. Yeah, no problem.
Right. The second thing is, like Maria mentioned, you know, we had a few cancellations, and that's a bummer. And I know that the staff does a fantastic job reaching out to us, whether who's going to be in attendance, etc. What I was going to suggest, especially for the full board meetings, is we put it out there for every single board member for the entire year. And, you know, that way it's on our, you know, work calendar. It's if we have some vacations planned, some bigger events in life, whatever it is, then, you know, it could be there. And then when time comes near, just to clarify, you're still coming, right? And that way, you know, there's no confusion, and then we are also less tempted to move the dates. But again, it's a suggestion. I know that there are so many pieces to it to put a meeting together, depending on, you know, who's joining and anybody that else we have invited, etc. But I feel like planning for the entire year would help us manage this piece better. So we always have majority. We will know ahead of time who's coming in person for the majority purpose, so that meetings are not canceled, and it will go smoothly. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jake. Thank you. And then Renee?
Hello, thanks for all the discussion. And I'm probably going to mention something that is a little would be a rare occurrence, but it did happen previously on an on-site meeting, which for those of us that live, within a few hours drive to Sacramento, so it's, manageable, but there was, there's weather conditions that was suggested that people stay off the roads for heavy, heavy rain and winds. And so, where do we fall in that? I know that's not common, and yet weather events seem to be more common. So I just want to throw out something like that. Like, where does that fall? Like, I don't necessarily want to put myself at risk to drive to be there in person when I fully can participate, remotely. So again, it might be, an odd thing, but
Oh,
but
not
I
all.
did
That's actually a
experience it.
really good point.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I did experience
that's a
it
great
myself.
point. I think I know where the answer is going to be, unfortunately, but Corinne, please.
Yes, I mean, if the meeting is being held under new section 11123.2, unfortunately, it does not make allowances for that type of situation. So, the only exception for having members participating from a remote private location and counting toward the majority is if the need is related to a physical or mental disability.
I wish they've added natural disaster or weather conditions, but oh well.
I'm
This
just
was
saying.
still a hard. I mean, I've been following this bill, so I know it's been a very, very contentious bill, even to the language it's written today. So, still happy to, landed where it landed. Okay, so third question that I'm proposing is the question that I might have more questions, but more discussion is last question. Sorry, it's so long, so many words in there. Meeting materials related to hearings for petitions for reinstatement of modification of penalties. As indicated in the meeting materials, board has 3 means by which to conduct such hearings. The board's current practice is to conduct such hearings as a full board, which we've had a full board meet about 5 petitioner hearings a year. The board's current practice is to conduct such hearings as a full board when a quorum of the board is not present. However, which we've had quite a few times, then we've had to have a hearing as a committee of the board. So the committee process used by the board, to me, works well and provides all members an opportunity to participate in the decision-making through the mail vote process in the past. So I am in favor of possibly transitioning petitioner hearings through a committee of the board, but I'm welcoming your thoughts. So if this is the direction we go, we'll probably have to have 2 to 3 panels / committees to hear petitions during the petitioner hearings, which members will rotate. And so not every member will have to be at the petitioner. It'll be 6 or less members. And so the decision still will have to be voted via mail vote process for what the committee is proposing. So this is a little bit of a new concept. So I'm sure members will have some thoughts to share. So Jesse, I see your hand raised. Go ahead, Jesse.
Thank you, Sung. I agree. I think I would be open to a committee doing this just to facilitate like a quicker turnaround for people who are petitioning. I just worry that if we have to wait for full board meetings, meetings get canceled and it's going to be a lot more difficult. I think this will streamline the process and allow us to hear more petitioners.
Right. And not only, I think what flexibility this could bring is that we've had very rigid petitioner hearing schedules. I think our policy manual has minimum 4, but we've had 5 because of such increase in the number of petitions. And my personal attempt at trying to make sure their wait time is less than 6 months to even get to us. So it's been a struggle. So I think what this committee process may also bring is a little bit more opportunity for petitioner hearings, which I think, and in many cases, from my recollection, we've always almost landed in unanimous verdict. So with that, Maria, your thoughts?
I like the current process that we have where the committee is possible. If we don't have a quorum, we have a committee meeting so that those meetings are not canceled. Ideally, and I like the process that everyone is invited. And if not everyone comes, the committee meeting still occurs rather than having rotating committee or rotating people. I think it's important for all of the board to participate in the petitioners' hearings and to listen to their testimony. If you're not present, you get the mail ballot. It's not the same thing as actually looking at the person and feeling what they're feeling. A lot of times when we do get a mail ballot, if you're not present, you kind of assume or you give the responsibility to the smaller group to get those gut feelings, those impressions of this person is truly remorseful, this person is, and you don't get, I think that should not be the norm. I think that can happen because of you're not being able to attend, but I think the petitioner hearing should be attended by all board members if they're able, and if they're not able, it becomes a committee, similar to what we do now. It doesn't, having a committee won't speed anything up unless you start having more meetings, which is also possible, but we don't have petitioner meetings canceled because of lack of quorum. So that's where I am. I would prefer that everyone be able to participate.
I hear you, Maria. Absolutely understand. I think it's just a challenge of the planning and coordinate. But again, it's this is I think the risk of potential for such disorganized disarray. So I think that we're trying to minimize that disarray. So that is the idea and concept behind it. But totally understand your thoughts there. Jake?
I agree with Maria, and I think we can modify the language here where it's not the how many members are listed? Is it 3? I think the invitation should be for everybody, and if as long as a minimum of whatever we decide are present, because everybody's opinion matters, and if we just have selected members for this meeting, then I don't think it's fair to petitioners, and everybody have a different angle and opinion, and as we discuss in closed sessions, and should be full board.
Okay, Jake. Jesse, your hand was raised.
Sorry, my question was answered.
Okay. Okay, well, I understand. So I'm gonna, okay, Renee, go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to clarify. So if it was a committee of the board that would be hearing the petitioners, but it would still go, the mail vote final would still go out to all the members. Is
Right.
that what you're saying?
That would be
Okay.
a requirement, yes. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I kind of second there what Maria had said about attending. I think the actual presence of the presentation provides so much context to the copious amounts of information that we're given to review for petitioners. I just think it's really vital. I don't know how I would necessarily really feel comfortable just providing a mail vote for a petitioner. So yeah, I kind of be in support of continuing if that as long as there's not like the full board needs to attend, because we just don't always have that, remaining a committee. So
Okay, all right. So with that, I think we're gonna have to probably modify a little bit of our language, but on the motion. But I mean, anyone, Maria, your hand is raised. Go ahead, Maria.
I just wanted to add something after this question before you go to public comment, so I don't want to interrupt this discussion.
Okay.
Just before you go to public comment.
That's okay, Maria. Go ahead.
Now, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I did want to make note and appreciate the board's priority to make sure that members of the public are have access to participate in the meeting. And I heard in Corinne's presentation that the law does not require all of the remote access that we have for members of the public, but that's something that the board has chosen to do because we believe and understand that the public comments are very important to our decision-making and discussions. And so I do appreciate that the board will always have remote access for public members, even though that's not required by the law, but we find that very important.
Thank you, Maria. Okay, so I think we have to figure out a way to modify some of our motion for policy. Jason, I put you on the spot, but now with things are a little changing around. So Jason, go ahead, speak.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I think I like what Maria and Jake have said. We could have it meet as a committee, have as many attendees that are able, willing, and desire to go and meet. And I think that it's also important, though, that petitioners get their response back in a timely fashion. I don't want this to increase the timeline that it takes to respond to them. That would be the wrong direction.
Okay. All right. So let's go. Any other thoughts before we move on to the attempting to develop some sort of a policy statement? I think our next slide hopefully should, oh my God, or is it all? Let's move to the next slide. Sarah? So I think for
apologize. The policy kind of draft statement did not make it into a slide.
Okay.
If I'm understanding correctly, it's my understanding that the board, where there appears to be consensus, is transitioning meetings of committee meetings to the teleconference format as authorized by the government code.
1123.5.
Yeah, retaining the board meeting model for petitioners and for the hybrid board meeting model that will allow for some members to participate from a private non-public location where a quorum of the board is physically present is the preference for all additional board meetings.
I think for petitioner hearings, and I think we are not saying we maintain. We are definitely going to be utilizing 1123.2 on petitioner hearings as well. We would just have, we will proceed if the committee of the board, due to quorum issues. Okay, everyone here, better travel to Sacramento. We need 7 people in there we cannot be, once we go down this route, we're not gonna go back. So, okay, Maria, go ahead.
That's not what I heard. I thought we still have the authority for petitioner meetings that if we don't have a full quorum to meet as a committee. That's our current practice. Are you saying that ability has gone away?
No, that's not gone away. I think it's just to me, that's poor planning. I think that's why I was trying to simplify this better planning for all of us so that we know that there's a certain number of meetings that you need to attend to. Well, you belong in this committee. So that I think for me, the challenge has been the day before the meeting. What happens is, unfortunately, when we combine, we don't do petitioner hearings separate from the full board meetings. And a lot of times what we've done is we've included agendized items that are also non-related to petitioner hearings and just kind of sneak in and out of there. And I think we've just had some times where we've had to not be able to proceed on those issues. And so I think it just causes a lot of confusion for the regulated public when that happens. But go ahead, Maria.
You bring up a good point, because historically petitioner hearings were petitioner hearings. They did not mix board business with them. And so we've added additional board meetings, essentially the first hour, sometimes 2 hours. And that's maybe what we should not do. We should have petitioner hearings be solely petitioner hearings of the entire board. And that way, if you don't have a quorum, you could have it act as a committee. But I do see your point that if we have board business and you don't have a quorum, then you have a problem. But I think that's our choice on how we put the agendas together. Now, Anne can correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that petitioner hearings in the past were only petitioner hearings. We did not have board business unless there was something urgent. It was not usually other agenda items.
I think historically, the items that included has been due to the urgency as well. So but Anne, go ahead.
No, you're correct. It's generally just if there's an urgent issue that's time sensitive, whether it's responding to federal rules or, in response to the
Regulations.
rulemaking process, those kinds of items that have a very specific time frame and timeline where the board is concerned it may not meet the deadline.
Go ahead, Maria, speak.
So with that information, I have another suggestion then, that I am okay with having a committee of the board reviewing the petitions if the entire board is a part of that committee. That way we have a choice to attend or not attend. If that helps with the logistics of other board items, but I just feel very uncomfortable not having everyone, if they're available, participate in the petitioner hearings.
So this is Anne. Sorry, I don't know if you guys can hear me. So I'm holding the microphone. So I think we probably need to hear from Corinne really quickly about that. I do believe that for it to be a committee, by definition, you cannot have a quorum of the board present.
That's exactly the tricky part. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you can call it a full board meeting, and if you don't have the full board and a quorum show up, it can transition into a committee meeting, but you can't really go the other way.
Well, I guess a lot of flying for me here, so it's okay. We're gonna have some, well, let's lay this out. So I think we're pretty clear on the committee meetings we're transitioning to. The fully remote. Jason, your hand is raised, so go ahead.
Sorry, I was just trying to get clarification from Corinne on that last point, Sung, but I like where you're going. Yes, 1 and 2 seem to be resolved, but it's what we would like, Corinne, is we would like to meet for petitioner hearings as a committee. And if we hit a quorum of the board remotely, does that mean we cannot do that?
I'm sorry, what?
If we have 10 board members meeting remotely, one staff member in Sacramento, can we go forward with petitioner hearings, or do we have to cancel it?
You don't have to cancel it, but I guess, and I'm probably not being as clear as I could. It sounds like what the consensus of the board is that you do not want to, you want to have as much participation as possible by the members. My recommendation would be that you make a decision about either having it be a full board. And again, if you don't achieve a quorum for that particular meeting, you can transition it to a committee. But I do not recommend that you call it a committee and then you have the entire board show up.
Well, that can't happen because you have more than 6 people. It no longer is a committee. Then
it's no longer a committee.
Board. And once it's a full board, you cannot have a remote meeting with not all members participating remotely.
Right. So I think that's part of the, what President O was talking.
Confusing.
Yeah, was referring to earlier, that there's some logistical issues because depending on if it's a committee or a board meeting, it would be logistically structured in a different way and subject to different rules under, the remote participation rules as they will take effect in January.
Exactly. So if we proceed to do petitioner hearings as a full board, we have to have 7 people in one room and plan to be there every month.
That's not
So we have 4.
if
We have
Thank you,
4.
Corinne.
we go become a committee. So it's not like you have to. That's the ideal. But if you don't, you still have the petitioner hearing as a committee. So it's like what we do now. So it's not a requirement that everyone be present. It's ideal.
Right.
I'm-
I think my argument to that is that I think at that point it's to me seems like a poor planning. We are like if we are committed to it, we should have full board for petitioner, or we don't and have a committee. I think we should plan to have a full board, then we should have full board for the sake of petitioner. So I think my argument was originally is let's just plan to have a committee, 6 people or less, reviewing petitioners and plan for it so that we can provide flexibility for petitioners and for us to be able to participate remotely so that we have this not a situation where, oh gosh, one person can't make it. Oh gosh, now it's a petitioner, is committee of the board. Oh gosh, we need to notify ALJ. It's just, I think it's just that was the concept. But I I understand. Yeah, I understand that this flip side of it. Jake, you're next.
Yeah, I was going to suggest that, if we have full board today and if one board member says, I don't want to be a part of this so that it can become a committee, and then we pursue as a committee, would that be an option? Meaning 1 or 2, if you say, would you like to be part of this committee or not? And if somebody voluntarily says no, or 2 people or 3 it might be that then really care for these hearings, then we have a committee and it goes your route, Sung.
So but then that still means that members are expected to travel to Sacramento in one location, at least 7 of them. So that would not still resolve this question of how would logistically can we plan for it. And it's, I mean, at that point, might as well participate, right? Members all would love to participate if they can. I think I was just trying to provide some flexibility too, so that not all members have to participate every petitioner hearings. And that was the original idea. But I like the creative thinking, Jake, but this is a very rigid and kind of very strange. I mean, Bagley-Keene alone was already an interesting law to begin with. Jesse, your thoughts?
Hi, Sung. Yeah, I kind of agree with your thinking, like we were saying before. For me, the way that I'm interpreting this is we essentially have to choose between 2 options. We either go in person as a full board meeting to hear petitioner hearings, or we decide to do a committee and do it remotely. And
Right.
we have to give the
That's
public
correct.
enough time to notify them of where the meeting is if we want to do a full board. And I completely agree, being in person, you get a different dynamic at hearings. I think it's ideal to be able to participate and for the full board to participate, but just logistically speaking, I think those are really like the 2 options that we have to decide between. I think that the committee option just it gives us more flexibility to be able to facilitate this a little more easily and coordinate less in-person traveling. I think that was just ultimately I think what you were getting at, what the
Yeah.
way I interpret it. It's pretty complicated, but
And lastly, that this is as of now for 2 years. So I was just hoping to be creative and think outside of the box a little bit and give some flexibility. I think Jason, your hand is raised, and then Maria. Jig, your hand is also raised. Wasn't sure if you mean to. Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to state that I am in favor of having more of a remote dynamic for petitioner hearings. And I just want real clarification. So we cannot, in that committee, it must consist of 6 or fewer people, correct?
Right. That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Jason. Maria?
I wanted to suggest that we divide the motion so that we could vote on the parts that we agree and then have the part that we disagree be a separate motion so we don't confuse the issue.
That sounds good, Maria. So, Jason, I'm gonna put you on the spot since you are already eager to. Let's get the motion out of the way for our where we, I think, all agree on, which is the motion first part. So what's displayed on the screen. The third section is not going to be in this motion, is my understanding, right? So if you would like to be so kind and make that motion.
So move.
So, but not about petitioner hearings. Thank you, Jason. And any second for Jason?
I'll second it, this Jig.
Thank you, Jig. With that, we're gonna open up for public comment really quick, and then we'll go back to and then vote, and then we'll go back to our discussion on the next. So.
This is the moderator. Did you want to take public comment in the hearing room first before I go?
Oh yeah, sorry, Anne. Is
No
there
worries.
anyone there?
There's no public comment in Sacramento.
Thank you.
All right. In that case, this is the moderator, and I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. And it looks like we do have a request for comment from Julie 3. Julie, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
In Butte County. And I just wanted to thank you so much for allowing public comment via the WebEx. I was also a former HR executive in Silicon Valley for 25 years, and we held all of our board meetings via WebEx, and we've got this wonderful technology, and you guys do a fantastic job of moderating, by the way. Your staff is fabulous. So I greatly appreciate the opportunity to dial in. I too am physically disabled. Mine happened to be by the vaccine, as you heard yesterday, but so driving at night's tough. I mean, filling up the car right now for $100 in gas is also quite tough. We've got 58 counties in this state. I mean, we have more counties than our country has states. So allowing for the public comment is just greatly appreciated. And for you all as board members, man, I would love to have all of you be able to call in so you have these wonderful sessions without having to actually get to Sacramento. If I had to drive in the middle of a horrible rainstorm, I would consider that a mental disability. So hopefully having to police it is not too much of a hindrance, since we're all, I think, pretty much adult. But again, wanted to thank you so much for allowing the public comment, and again, for running such a wonderful board. So I hope that you're able to conclude with doing the right thing. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the comments. All right. Sarah, thank you.
Yep.
Oh,
I
there's one
apologize.
more.
Yep, one more. Inas Anton, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
A registered pharmacist, and I don't see why not remote meetings still continue. It's a blessing. Everyone will be able to participate without the burden of traveling in natural disasters or rain or whatever conditions. And as it said earlier, with the gas prices going up, I find no problem with this. I think everyone can participate and can say public comments without any problem. I don't see a problem with this. That's it. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to comment.
Thank you for the comments.
Right, this is a moderator. Looks like we have another request from person identified as caller 1. And you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device. Uh-oh, looks like the audio dropped. We'll give them a moment to see if they can reconnect their audio. Okay, looks like they got reconnected. I'm going to request to unmute your microphone once again. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device. All right, and you are unmuted. Oh no, once again, person who is caller 1, if you oh, there we go, that's back again. Let's try one more time. Right, you should be unmuted. It seems like the audio keeps dropping each time you unmute. A couple things I can have you do is you can either type your comment in the question answer box, or I can have you call in.
Hi, Sarah. We'll just see if they can type.
Yeah, let me repeat that because I think that their audio dropped when I was giving the instructions. So caller 1, it seems like your audio keeps dropping every time your microphone's unmuted. I can have you do 2 things. If you want to type your comment into the question and answer feature of WebEx by clicking that Q&A button, I can verbally read out your comment. Or if you'd like, you can try connecting your audio through your phone instead by going up to audio and video at the top of WebEx, click switch audio, and then where it says call in, it'll give you numbers, the phone number in order to connect your audio through your phone instead.
Unfortunately, I am not able to. Oh, there's something. Oh, just wanted to support the discussion about.
Okay, I can read this out loud for everyone.
Go ahead, Sarah. Yep.
I just wanted to support the discussion about continuing remote BOP meetings. This would cause the least amount of disruption for the consumer. If remote meetings have worked in the past, let's continue.
Thank you for the comments.
All right, and this is the moderator. Appears there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you. And just for clarity, one, for the public, we're continuing to have WebEx regardless of our discussion. And 2, for clarification, the motion was in light of the flexibility provided by Business and Profession Codes for Section 4309, the temporary authorities established in Senate Bill 544. The board supports the following as of January 1st, 2024. All committee meetings will be convened via teleconference consistent with the provisions established in Section 2 of SB 544. As of January 1st, 2024, all board meetings will be convened via teleconference consistent with the provisions established in Section 1 of SB 544. If possible, just so that, I guess, gives a little flexibility. Jason, and was it Jake that second?
Yes.
Okay. Just confirming for the staff. I was told to clarify that motion. So with that, we're going to go for vote. Jesse?
Yes.
Thank you. Renee?
Just to clarify, so we're voting on the first and second question only at this time?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Then yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Indira?
Yes.
Thank you. Jose?
Yes.
Thank you. KK?
Yes.
Thank you, Jake.
Yes.
Thank you, Maria.
Yes.
Thank you, Nicole.
Yes.
Thank you, Jason.
Yes.
Thank you, and I vote yes. Okay, now where we're gonna go, I think we've talked it enough, but Jesse, I see your hand is raised, so go ahead.
I do have one more question, actually. One of the public comments made me think of it. And if we were to proceed with full board meetings in person, do the petitioners also have to be present in Sacramento for those meetings? Or do they have an option of participating remotely?
No, we always provide them the opportunity.
Okay,
But
so they can do either way. Okay.
yeah, I think that's just continuation. We have not formally adopted that as a policy, but we've been just offering as a gesture of goodwill to all petitioners.
Great, thank you.
Okay, I know we've talked this out, so I think that prudent thing to do is just probably to provide a motion and see if there's any second, and then provide public comment and go for vote and see where we land. So I see Jason's hand is raised. So Jason?
Yeah, Song, I'm happy to make a motion. Can we have a motion that petitioner hearings will be conducted by a committee? And just
Sure.
leave it at that, and then the staff can, along with the president, can devise exactly what that schedule would look like, or do we need something more specific?
Nope, I think that's good enough. Yeah. Corinne or Anne, you can confirm.
I mean, it sounds like Jason is making the motion that's reflected pretty much as stated at the bottom of the slide.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is Jesse. I'll second his motion.
Thank you, Jesse. All right, with that, we're gonna open up for public comment and we'll see where we land.
All right, this is the moderator at the direction of the board. I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. And I just want to confirm there's no public comment in the room.
No comment in Sacramento. Thank you.
Great. All right, and it appears there is no request for public comment on WebEx. Would you like me to close that Q&A feature?
Yes, please. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, let's see where we land. So starting with Jesse, how do you vote?
Yes.
So just to clarify, this motion is to have petitioner as a committee of the board, just for clarification. Renee, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you, Renee. India, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Jose, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. KK, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Jake, how do you vote?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh my God, everyone is just going along after all the discussion. Okay. Maria, how do you vote?
No.
Okay, thank you, Maria. Nicole, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Jason, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you, and I vote yes. Thank you, everyone. I understand Maria and everyone's concerns that, so remember, this is just planning. We'll see how it goes. We can always change our course throughout the next couple years. So this is, and go ahead, Maria. Yes.
Just one comment. I think that if any of us feel that the names are public information there, we could attend as members of the public. So it's not like we don't get the testimony if we don't want it. Could we get the material? The question would be is, could all the materials go to everyone in advance? But that's, I guess, would be a office logistical question.
I would imagine they would have to be, because we would still have to vote on it and have to have full evidence that they're submitting for the hearing has to be included.
But would the record be sent to all board members before the petitioner committee meeting?
That is.
So that's an office question, but that they can figure that out later. You don't need to answer now. That could be between you and Anne determining what the logistics are. But thank you.
but I would push forward that that would be provided to all board members. So, but we'll see how it goes. I'm just hoping for a better planning so we don't have scrambling last minute where we're canceling meetings or changing the meeting to a committee of the meeting. And so I'm hoping that this will provide us with some flexibilities that we desperately needed as we've learned during the times of gaps that we faced, many of them flying in and then flying home, and other situations that arose. That was always fun. So thank you all. Thank you all for this lovely discussion, though. I think that this is going to be a new try. Again, we'll see how it goes for the first half of the year, and I'm sure we'll be able to revisit this issue. So thank you all. We've spent quite a time on this, more than I thought we were going to. So I will work with the staff and council to make any necessary updates to the procedural manual to reflect our position. And once updates are made, we will send it to the members. I'm going to plow through really quick on the Organizational Development Committee, if that's okay. Agenda item 12. Moving to agenda item 12. The report is for information only, so I will keep my comments very brief and open up for board and public comments at the end. The fiscal year ended June 30th of 2023, and final budget figures are reflected in the meeting materials. The board's authorized budget for last fiscal year was about $32.6 million. The board received about $36.9 million in revenue during the fiscal year and estimates it has expanded about $31.3 million. Charts included within the materials provide breakdowns in both expenditures and revenue received. The meeting materials also include the first report of the new fiscal year, which began July 1. It is anticipated the board's authorized budget for this year will be about $32.9 million. Budget charts of the first 2 months of current year are also provided in the meeting materials. The board's fund condition indicates that it is projected the board fund will slowly decrease still, however, at a slower rate than was provided in the board's fee audit. According to the report provided by the DCA, the board's fund currently has 6.2 months in reserve. As a reminder, under the provisions of Business and Professions Code, Section 4400P, the board shall seek to maintain a reserve equal to approximately 1 year's operating expenditures, and hopefully with our fee bill, that this will help that. Member attendance and mail vote information is included in attachment 2 and 3. Again, I'm truly grateful to everyone for their time and commitment to protecting California consumers. Lastly, the board has 14 vacant staff positions. Recruitments are ongoing. I receive regular updates on recruitments as part of our weekly meetings with the executive officer and monthly as part of our Organizational Development Committee meetings. There are also 2 vacant public member positions on the board. If you know anyone wonderful, please let them know so that they can serve on this lovely board. The meeting dates for 2024 are included in attachment 4. Now with Jake's comment, I think what I will work with our staff is to creating a calendar invites to be sent to all members for all the meetings. And we will also proceed on how we will continue on with committee selections for our petitioner hearings as we've just wrapped up that discussion. So Steph and I will work with in figuring out balancing member participation for those petitioner hearing committees. Also note that we are going to try one-day meetings for full board meetings for a couple times a year, trying to better plan and to see how that would work out. So we've traditionally had 2 full-day meetings scheduled, but historically we've realized we could probably fit it into one-day meetings. So we're going to try that at least for the 2024. So all the dates are scheduled. Sorry, we've had to change few dates due to some national and state conferences that our staff and maybe has to attend. So with having covered all of that, members, any comments or questions? Seeing none, moderator, we're all ready for public comment. And before I go, Anne, is there anyone in Sacramento?
No public comment in Sacramento.
Thank you. Sarah?
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access these features and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A feature?
Yes, please. Thank you. All right, any other comments before we move to the next agenda item? Just we'll survey really quick. Anyone needs a quick break? I'm hoping to continue through, but if anyone needs a quick break, please.
Sung, this is Jessie. I could use a quick break.
Okay, let's take a quick 5-minute break and we'll come back at 11:45. So we'll get started back. Just for planning purposes, everyone, I'm hoping that we can wrap the meeting up by 1 o'clock today. So we'll not take a lunch break and proceed if that's okay with you. But if you need to grab snacks, please feel free to do so. A little perk of remote meeting, I suppose. So we'll proceed. And before we go on, I'll take a quick roll call. Jessie, are you back?
Hi, Sung, I'm back.
Thank you, Jessie. Renee?
Hello, back.
Hi, Renee. Indira? Not yet. Jose?
Present.
Thank you, Jose. KK?
Present, sir.
Thank you, Jake.
Yes.
Thank you, Maria.
Present.
Thank you, Nicole.
I'm here.
Thank you, Jason.
I'm here.
Thank you. And I'm going back on Indira. Indira. All right, Indira. We'll just keep an eye out for your camera to turn on, and hopefully Debbie can reflect in the minutes when your camera turns back on, or just say hello when you're back. Moving on to next agenda item 13, Licensing Committee report. I'm pleased to provide a report on the Licensing Committee. Thank you to my fellow committee members, Jake Patel, Jake Patel, Trevor Chandler, Jessica Crawley, Renee Barker, and Jason Wise. First item in the Licensing Committee is discussion and consideration of provisions for remote processing. This has been a long discussion, but we've thoroughly enjoyed it. To facilitate physical distancing early in the COVID-19 pandemic, the board approved a waiver to extend the provisions for remote processing. The waiver was based on the board's authority in Business and Professions Code 4062 and was limited in duration. The meeting materials contain extensive information and history on remote processing and the remote processing waiver that has been in effect for a majority of the pandemic. As we have discussed this issue several times, I'm not going to review it. I'm pleased to report that during the July committee meeting, the committee reached some consensus on fundamental policy questions that I believe could guide a path forward on provisions for remote processing. More recently, during the committee's October 2023 meeting, again, after significant discussion, the committee is offering a recommendation for the board to sponsor legislation. The meeting materials provide summary information on the committee's discussion, so I will focus on the review of the statutory proposal, which is provided in Attachment 1. The proposal will provide the board with the authority to waive both provisions of pharmacy law and regulation, again, pharmacy law and regulation, to allow for research and study into new and innovative methods for drug handling under specified conditions. As I shared during the committee meeting, I believe this is appropriate to ensure the board has means to allow for research into the use of technology, for example, under the auspices of the Accredited School of Pharmacy. Such an approach would allow for evaluation of changes in a controlled, research-driven environment and allow future decisions of the board to be made based on data. Second, the language provides the board with explicit authority to adopt regulations to establish provisions for remote processing beyond those currently allowed. Establishing explicit authority for the board to promulgate regulation in this area will allow the board to respond more nimbly to conditions as they change and to respond to findings of research through a public rulemaking process. The language also includes a proposed definition of remote processing. As we open up for discussion, I want to highlight that for some members of the committee and members of the public, the proposed language may not go far enough. For others, the proposed language goes too far. If the board agrees with this compromise language, the board staff will work to identify an author for the measure for the upcoming legislative year. If it is allowed also, I don't want to cause any confusion, but I will also work with the staff to confirm this, but if recommended, should the board agree with the committee recommendation, board should begin development of regulations while the legislation is going through, if that's possible. This will hopefully ensure regulations are ready for promulgation should the legislation be successful. And Corinne and Ann can speak further to that if necessary. Members, your thoughts and comments? Maria?
Someone else would talk first, sorry. I just had a clarification, and I see there's section E and F being added, but section F talks about the definitions and says for the purposes of this subdivision, and it defines what's included and what's not. Does that mean that the subdivision is only F, or is those definitions also applying to E?
I'm going to point to Ann, our tireless executive officer, for that, because it may be our oversight, may not, just pulling it up.
Well, it could be purposeful. I just wanted to see what's our intent for E. I don't know what the definition of subdivision is. Subdivision, the whole section 4071.1, or is it only F?
I believe it's the whole subdivision is. But Corinne, before I go any further and pretend to be an attorney, I will further give it to you.
Yeah, so subdivision just means F. But that doesn't mean that, the board couldn't decide to change the language of F to make it so that it applies.
So it probably should have been subsection. Is that what it is? I don't remember
The
that.
technical term is subdivision.
But if we're trying to apply to whole 4071.1, which I believe was the intent. Sorry, Maria, go ahead.
I just wanted to know what your intent was, so I'll be quiet.
The intent is for the whole 4071.1.
So this is Anne. Sorry, there was a little bit of sound challenge here. So I believe that the draft, the way that it was drafted was for the definition to apply to F only, given that there's kind of parameters already in some of the other sections. But that's a policy question for the board. But I believe as drafted, it was intended to apply to F.
That's my question, is if that's true, then our the discussion I wanted to have is the board comfortable that the schools of pharmacy studies could include technology that includes the dispensing and counseling and verification? I mean, the whole technology issue of, are we okay with studying that? I'm not quite sure where I land on that at this point, but if that's the intent, then that makes a different discussion. Are we going to allow waivers to look at technology that bypasses the pharmacist?
So this is Anne, just should it be helpful, I think that E was written a little bit broad. so that board members would have greater flexibility to make a decision, right? If we narrow E, then it's automatically eliminating option for the board. And again, policy question, just trying to provide a little bit of context as to why E is a bit broad.
Okay. Thank you, Anne. So E and F, I think I'm a little bit confused now, but okay, we'll navigate through. So E is then broad enough where it's just the whole 4071.1 and allowing us to be able to do research in terms of remote processing. Then F was for the purposes of the regulation, we're defining remote processing. Am I following that correctly, Anne?
Yes, and like so for like should it be helpful again, the definition is, as drafted, right or wrong, as drafted, the definition is specific to F, because if you expanded it to the entire section, then it could potentially like create conflicts with like B, where it's talking about, for purposes of entering medication chart orders, it could create some conflict within the statute.
Got it. Just to develop the regulation, we're defining for the remote processing. Okay. Maria?
And the reason I bring it up is because I'm not adverse to this, but I think that we just have to be prepared. I'm going to see if I can say this politically correct. Prepared for applications of waivers of technology companies that partner with a school of pharmacy to look at technology that is dispensing medications, potentially bypassing pharmacists. I'm not saying a school of pharmacy would take that project on, but I could see that technology companies will be looking for schools of pharmacy to partner with to look at technology in the future. And I'm not saying that that's right or wrong. I just wanted to say it out loud so everyone knows that the board will have an opportunity to review these, but I could see a lot of interesting propositions coming our way.
So would we be able to, Corinne and Anne, I think what Maria is saying is actually an excellent point. Can we expand the definition of remote processing to E and F only? Because that might, I think that may be a good starting point for now after all what we've gone through. Or would that,
Yes. Yeah,
yeah.
so I think we probably would like need to like take that back and think it through a little bit. There are other provisions in pharmacy law that allow for remote provisions, right? Maybe under 4052.1, 4052.2. So I think we're trying to like not limit it to just 4071.1 when we're talking about the waiver things, but I think if I'm understanding some of the concern where we just say methods for drug handling, that might be too broad. It might be maybe that we try to refine that a little bit more or put in like where you definitely would not be interested in, or you feel like that's not an appropriate thing to study at this time. It might be better to take an approach that way as opposed to pulling in the definition that we're putting in F.
Okay. Maria, do you have any thoughts on where you might feel comfortable?
I can hear what Anne said to keep it separate because it could get messy, but I think that we just need to be very clear in E what kinds of waivers we'd be interested in looking at so that we don't open up the world to be too big. And certainly we'll have the opportunity to not review those, but that's just a lot of board time. And there's a lot of venture capital companies out there that would be willing to throw dollars at a study. I don't want to have to review them all just to say I'm not interested in that. So I'd prefer to have it be a little bit more narrow. Not like we're not going to be looking at drones delivering medications, or I just I can't even think of what technology companies would offer us. That it would just be amazing.
I think they're already
Amazing in a bad way, not necessarily amazing in a good way.
I think they're already trying to deliver drugs with drones, but that's beside the point. So I think the concerning statement that though you're pointing out is the board may waive the application under E. The board may waive the application of provisions of pharmacy law and its regulations applicable to remote processing of prescriptions, right? That sentence right there, I think is a little troubling because what is that remote processing? So if you have any suggestions.
Well, Anne also mentioned about the drug handling, because is it really drug handling that we're looking at, or is it order, you know, it's not the drug, it's not the product, or are we actually looking at the product?
That was a comment that was brought in as well. So it really is about background, right? Not the actual physical handling, but the behind the scenes processing of prescriptions. So any suggestions? Any thoughts, Anne? Because I know you're always creative with these things. So just with the intent of maybe not so focused on drug handling. Just also, I think that was because of the current regulation language we have that allows us to waive regulation. That's the language that's used in that section of the regulation. That's why we use this word here. But what we were trying to do is intent is to expand that waive authority of regulation and statute by adding this statute. And so that's where this kind of came about. Hopefully that makes sense. This may be a little bit too much granular details, but all right. Any thoughts, suggestions? Or we can also just proceed with the committee recommendation as well. That's an option always available to us. Maria, go ahead.
I'm wondering if we have such a diverse group of people in the public, if they may have a really unique suggestion that is it okay to go to public comment and then come back, or
of course.
I just don't want to work. I mean, this is so important. I don't want to wordsmith something in just 30 seconds.
I agree with you. Yeah. KK?
Yeah, I mean, this is just a general comment. As we all know, California is generally at the forefront of technology in many aspects. You know, Silicon Valley is right there. And they have brought in a lot of changes in operations as well as financials and technology world. So I don't think we will escape the new technology. I'm sure it will do some research. I believe we should be cautious about what technological changes can come, but at the same time, there should be a facilitator role that we should provide so we can also benefit in this industry from the new advances in the technology that can, especially in the medication error reduction, especially in order entry and the other aspects of the pharmacy where automation has been proven in other industry to bring in positive change. So while remote processing, maybe we can limit the definition to what a human being can do remotely using technology, but we may also want to look into facilitating the new research that can be happening via proper channels. So everybody is aware, regulatory side, Board of Pharmacy is aware, and the person or institutions who are engaging in that activity also have a clear path with proper quote unquote blessing of what path they can choose and what they can do safely, so we can have a data that shows, okay, this is something we need to look into as a new line of technology that can be enabled. So That's just a general comment.
Thank you, KK. I would also just state that I mean, me personally, I don't care. It takes 3-4 years to get to where we are. Just the context to get to where we are today, it took literally about probably 6 or 7 licensing committee meetings. And so I am more inclined to proceed as a committee recommendation. Again, this is just the first step. This will go through legislation, and once it gets through legislation, a whole host of things could happen. So I think maybe we can just clarify the intent and also just to proceed with our committee motion. And I will be probably more comfortable with that so that we can proceed as this is, I'm hoping to have this wrapped up by the end of this year so we can hopefully seek legislature for next year. Renee?
Hello. I, yeah, there's a lot going on here, and I know I was in the meeting for the discussion. There's a lot of discussion, but possibly just gonna throw this out there for the drug handling. Seems so specific, and not sure that it seems pretty narrow. But if it was something like medication management, because that could imply, some more like electronic remote or drug evaluations. Drug handling seems pretty specific for the actual just, touching of medications. That's how I would interpret it. But I just wondering if medication management kind of allows for more flexibility.
Okay. Thank you, Renee. All right. So any other comments? Since there is a committee recommendation, I'm going to proceed for public comment, and then so we can hear from some thoughts from people, and then we'll go for the vote and see where we are, and then we'll move on from there.
All right, this is a moderator. At the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. And it looks like we do have a couple requests for public comment. So I'm gonna start with our raised hands, and then I'll get to the people who typed comment in the Q&A. So first I have Jackie Stover. Jackie, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Jackie Stover. I'm a specialty pharmacist. And I just wanted to say that I agree with the board separating E and F as they are different subjects. Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator. Next I have Julie 3. And Julie, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Hey, board. Thank you again for allowing me to make comment. This is fascinating for me. So many things are going through my brain, and a lot of my comments may not even make sense to you, but I'll throw them out anyway. I agree with, I think it was Maria, we've got people that follow around Amazon vans, right, and do these little porch robberies of packages. I can't even imagine having drugs being dropped from drones. So that I think there needs to be some licensing opportunity by you guys for those possibilities. Number two, this whole thing during COVID, we had a lot of people going to India to buy ivermectin. Is that being licensed? Is that being watched? Do people have an outlet to go to if they run into problems with those medications? Number three, I had a friend who she would go to the Caribbean for some pain medication. So there's a guy in the Caribbean, she calls to order. He's the processor. He fills it with the pharmacy, or I don't even think it's a pharmacy, to be honest, some sort of a drug thing operation in San Diego. So she'd get the actual medication from San Diego mailed to her house. Now she ran into obviously some problems, and I would love for her to have an outlet to go to call with complaints. We have the whole biolab thing in Reedley. It's like with these pregnancy tests and a lot of nefarious bad actors. So I think I definitely agree. You've got to get your arms around it. And whatever these comments are worth, thank you for your time and listening to me. Appreciate it.
Thank you for the comments.
All right, this is the moderator. Our next individual is Richard Dang. And Richard, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
On behalf of the California Pharmacists Association, thanks for the opportunity to comment. With regards to E, this is just hearing your conversation. It might just be best to consider removing the for drug handling. If you remove that phrase from the statement, it's still pretty clear that it's speaking about the new and innovative practices related to remote processing. So that might alleviate the concerns mentioned about that aspect. Alternatively, replacing it with explicitly saying for remote processing. But I think as a matter of grammar, just removing it, it still makes sense because the subsequent part of the sentence refers specifically to remote processing already. So that's just my own kind of individual thought on that, hearing your conversation. But for the comment on behalf of the association for section F, we appreciate the board listening to public comment, and we do support the F as written to be a little bit broad to give the board flexibility, but also to limit it to California licensed pharmacists. Just as a matter of point of discussion, or maybe clarification even, F is intended to extend to all practice settings and not just health facilities that are mentioned earlier on in 4071.1. So just double checking that F is indeed intended to apply to all practice settings, including community pharmacy. The board also heard a lot of comments from specialty pharmacists, and that's a great place where remote processing can occur. But I also don't, as far as I understand, there's no definition of a specialty pharmacy from the board. Specialty pharmacies aren't specifically licensed. So I do believe that keeping it broad allows the board the flexibility to apply remote processing to those locations and licensed facilities and pharmacies that meet the standards that will be set by the specific regulations mentioned in F. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments, Dr. Dang.
All right, this is the moderator. Next, we have Enos Anton. And Enos, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Hi, my name is Ines Anton. I'm a California licensed specialty pharmacist, and I want to ask the board to separate Part E and F, because F clearly describe our duties and tasks that we perform on daily basis as a specialty pharmacist. We don't handle drugs, and we don't do end-stage product verification, and that would be really helpful for our patients and consumers. I'm not sure about Part E, but Part F clearly describes specialty pharmacy duties and tasks that we can do remotely, and that has been a blessing for 3 years. So we hope the board can continue that. And thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to comment.
Thank you for the comment.
All right, this is the moderator. I'm going to go to our people who typed into the Q&A, and then I'm going to go back to the raised hands again, just because our Q&A people have been waiting patiently. So first I have Lindsay Gullahorn, and Lindsay, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
California Community Pharmacy Coalition. Just want to thank the board for and really appreciated the discussion the licensing committee a couple weeks ago and the ongoing discussion this board has had over the last year and a half. Generally speaking, given all of the benefits to both the pharmacy workforce and patients of remote work, we think there should be broad authorization to allow it to take place in many settings, including community pharmacy settings. And we do think that remote processing is aligned with the board's objective to protect patients and reduce stress in the pharmacy. One thing we do want to note, we believe remote processing authority should not be limited to just California licensed pharmacies. We think if there is this limitation, remote work won't be fully leveraged to ensure patient access to care and assist with pharmacy workflow. So that's the one thing we wanted to point out with this proposal. But again, thank the board for the discussions. And if this passes, we look forward to engaging in the legislative process. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments, Lindsay.
All right, this is a moderator. Next we have Gigi Patel. And Gigi, once again, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device. Gigi, you'll need to click the unmute me button when it shows up on your device. So I'm going to request to unmute one more time. Okay, it looks like they may be having audio issues, but they did type their comment in the Q&A, so I'll go ahead and read it. This says, does this limit pharmacists from verifying medications in unlicensed pharmacies operating under medical license?
Thank you, Sarah. Can move on to the next.
Sure. Next we have John Gray. And John, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Hi, good afternoon. This is John Gray, a registered pharmacist with Kaiser Permanente. First of all, just want to thank the licensing committee for just continuing to slog through this. As President O said, it's been a long time, and also want to express our general support for this direction, just with the one caveat that, you know, we recognize that, you know, getting to the finish line of actually having a regulation that would allow for remote processing in essentially all practice settings will be a long process, right? To get through the legislative process next year and then finalize a regulation after that will take time. You know, but recognizing that this is probably the best path forward, we're supportive of this direction. With respect to the discussion on Subdivision E, we would recommend proceeding with the committee recommendation and not changing Subdivision E. I think Executive Officer Sodergren kind of said it pretty well when she sort of kind of said that, you know, if you embed a definition of remote processing that is the same as or sufficiently similar to the one that's already in F, then it feels like Subdivision E no longer becomes necessary unless the only purpose of Subdivision E would be to allow for studies of remote processing in the 1.5 year period between the time the bill becomes law and a regulation can be finalized, and it would kind of foreclose any research on other new technologies that may become available at some point in the further on future. So for that reason, we recommend leaving Subdivision E as it's written and proceeding with the committee recommendation. Thanks very much for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you for the comments, Dr. Gray.
All right, this is the moderator, our next individual. This is our person who's having audio issues earlier, so I'm going to read their comments from the Q&A. They said, I appreciate the BOP speaking about this continued topic. I think we need to take baby steps. What if the BOP allows remote verification for the practices setting that was successfully operating under the COVID waiver? Then we can make another step to include other practice sites. It worked during COVID, so there should be, I think that's supposed to be shouldn't, be any issues. I agree to add medication management to the wording.
Thank you for the comment.
All right. I'm going to go back to our raised hands because it looks like we have a couple from call-in users. So one moment. All right, so call-in user 19, You'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. I'm going to request to unmute your microphone. I believe WebEx will ask you to unmute by pressing *6.
There. My name is Cindy, and I would like to support remote processing, especially for non-front-facing pharmacists such as specialty pharmacists, and hope the board can move forward with this. Just as in the previous topic, some members and the public have voiced their concerns about driving conditions and cost of gas, and we are more affected by this with driving in unfavorable conditions. Some of us driving over 100 miles a day to get to work. You can only imagine the cost of gas per week driving those distances too. I'd also like to support restricting on remote processing to pharmacists residing in California. In my current location of practice, due to the revoking of the emergency processing order, we lost a lot of pharmacists and techs, and none of those positions were replaced by California resident licensed individuals. California needs to move forward and catch up with the rest of the country with remote processing, but at the same time, protect California jobs. And I want to thank the board for allowing me time to voice my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you for the comment.
All right, this is the moderator. Next, we have call-in user 23, and you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. When WebEx prompts you to unmute, I believe it'll ask you to press *6.
Hi, my name is Dylan. I'm one of the specialty pharmacists. I want to thank the board for the time and for their consideration of these amendments. I want to echo what was previously said by other board members as well as public commenters with regarding to long distance driving and the cost of gas. During the board meeting, we just mentioned a handful of meetings each quarter or a year. For us, it's 5 days or more a week, 52 weeks a year. And while my situation might be unique, it's not the exception to the rule. Just the other day, I witnessed firsthand a horrific accident on the freeway, and just 1 or 2 seconds before, it could have been me. And this is not just my unique case, but this happened every day with hundreds, if not thousands, of pharmacists statewide. So I really want the board to consider this amendment, and I want to thank the board for the time. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments.
This is the moderator. It appears we have another request for comment from Hannah. And Hannah, I'll request to unmute your microphone, but if you don't want to unmute, I can also read your comment. You'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
My name is Hannah. I'm health outcomes pharmacist. Our job is to make calls to make people adhere to their medications, and it's very, very beneficial to the industry. Unfortunately, after we moved to pharmacies, the environment is very loud, and sometimes they speak loudly regarding, patient HIPAA information, and I was leaving it like a voicemail, and those information may appear in the voicemail I leave, and this is of course against HIPAA. I have to listen to my messages and delete them if they have any HIPAA information. At the same time, our job is taken by other pharmacists from other states who allow to do our calls, California calls, from home. So this is my concern, actually. Thank you.
For the comments.
All right, this is the moderator. Appears there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Please. Thank you so much, Sarah. we're going to bring back the discussion back to the members. Maria, your hand is raised. Maria?
I'd like to suggest that we consider Dr. Dang's comment regarding just removing the words for drug handling. It doesn't impact E and may clarify it actually a bit. I do appreciate the committee's time and effort in putting this together, but I'm not sure those 3 words are helpful.
Okay. All right. So in that case, if members are agreeable, we would have to vote down this motion and have a motion. So Jesse, what are your thoughts?
All right, so are you, with that suggestion, it would read then, in order to enable an accredited school pharmacy recognized by the board to experiment with new and innovative methods or to develop new and better methods of or concepts involving the ethical practice of pharmacy?
Mm-hmm.
Is that right? That still sounds a little strange to me, to be honest. Like for me, it seems like to experiment with new and innovative methods of what, I guess. That's removing the drug handling part is still a little confusing to me, but maybe Corinne can give us her legal perspective on how that would sound.
At this point, it's really more of a policy discussion for the board than anything legal that I could contribute.
I hear you. So I just suggest that we not to try to cut this discussion short at all. I think we have a committee motion. Let's see where we go, and then we'll vote and proceed depending on where we land. I do think, Jason? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jason.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to clarify, Sung, when you get to me, I'm going to abstain. I did vote for the measure to bring it before the full board, but since we're talking about bringing it to the legislature, I'll end up abstaining on this.
Got it. Thank you, Jason. Okay. So we'll proceed and we'll go from where we land. So I'm going to just call for the vote, unless members have any other comments before we go for the vote.
So just to be clear, we are voting to update the language, correct?
We are voting for the committee recommendation, which was drafted as in attachment 1. So committee recommendation recommended the board sponsorship of a statutory proposal as discussed by the committee. All right, we'll go for the vote. Jesse, how do you vote?
I'm gonna vote no.
Okay, Renee, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Indira, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Jose, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, KK, how do you vote?
I'm going to abstain for now.
Okay. All right. And Jake, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Maria, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay. Nicole, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. And Jason is abstaining, right? Okay. And I will vote yes. So the motion passes. I think that this is just a good discussion. We'll continue on. And there will be ample opportunity for us to further discuss this issue as this proceeds through the chain of events. So I think this is a good starting point us to move forward. So with that, we're going to move on to the next discussion unless members have any other comments before we move on. Just your hand is raised, so I don't know if, okay. All right. Next is discussion and consideration of pharmacist to pharmacy technician ratio. Strategic objective 1.3 relates to the exploration and pursuit of changes in the law appropriate for the authorized duties of a pharmacy technician. An important first step in this evaluation included in this committee convening listening sessions and soliciting feedback from licensees regarding potential changes. The results of these efforts were incorporated in Assembly Bill 1286, which the governor signed earlier this month. This was an important first step, but I believe additional changes may be appropriate. As we continue our assessment of the pharmacy technician licensing program, one area the board continually receives comments on is the issue of a pharmacist to pharmacy technician ratio. The meeting materials detail the current law related to ratios. The meeting materials also detail out several policy questions considered by the committee and a summary of the committee's discussion and public comment. You will note from the meeting materials that this is a very complicated issue with a variety of opinions on the topic and very long history. Ultimately, it is incumbent upon the board to determine if the current ratio established in the statute is appropriate for consumer protection or if changes are appropriate. You will note that the committee did not reach consensus on this topic and requested that the staff develop a draft survey for committee members to consider at a future meeting. The committee is hopeful that the additional feedback from pharmacists and technicians will assist the board in determining if changes are necessary to the current ratio. Members, do you have any questions or comments? There is no action items for this agenda item. All right, moderator, if you can open up for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. It looks like we do have a request for comment from Richard Dang. And Richard, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Hi, Richard Dang, California Pharmacists Association. Thank you, President O, for the summary. Just to reemphasize some of my public comments to the committee, this is a very important topic for the board to continue to evaluate, but we do believe that it is premature to propose any legislation at this time, as AB 1286, sponsored by this board, has just passed and will go into effect January 1st. And yesterday, this board talked about a potential delay in implementation of enforcement for some of those provisions. AB 1286 established a minimum staffing floor that is aimed to address some of the staffing levels. And so we do believe that we need to have at least a year of implementation before we bring any proposed legislation to the legislator modifying the existing pharmacy to technician ratio. I don't believe it would be well received if we come back to the legislature so quickly soon after AB 1286 without seeing how it was able to take into effect. So we do believe that the recommendation to survey and evaluate is a prudent course of action instead of bringing forth any legislation in the immediate legislative year. Along with that, CPHA will be willing to help convene a roundtable to collect some of that information as well. But it is an important topic, and it is always great to engage in conversation to collect the feedback and information in order to guide the board's decision to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments, Dr. Dang.
All right, this is the moderator. It appears there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you so much, Sarah. Next is discussion and consideration of pharmacist-provided CLIA-waived tests, including potential expansion of authorized tests. As you may recall, the board sponsored SB 409 in 2021. It feels like ages ago, to expand access to pharmacist-provided CLIA-waived tests. The legislation established the general types of tests the pharmacist could provide under specified conditions, but left open the potential for additional expansion of authority. I included this item on the committee agenda for open discussion to determine if at this time, in the interest of public safety, the board should consider expanding pharmacists' authority to other tests. As indicated in the meeting materials, the committee received comments in both support of and a few opposition to expanding authority. Comments in support of such expansion noted that one area that may be appropriate is women's health. As a chair, I'll be working with staff on next steps and potentially drafting the regulation. Members, do you have any questions or comments? Moderator, we are ready for public comments.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. And it looks like we have a request from Richard Dang. Once again, Richard, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Thank you, Richard Dang, California Pharmacists Association, and thank you, President O, for that summary as well. It sounds like the board is heading towards the regulatory process, which we would agree with. We would just add that it is premature again to bring another legislative action on this topic, if that's the case, but it doesn't sound like it. So we definitely recommend moving forward with a regulatory process, as SB 409 did give the board the authority to adopt regulations to add additional tests if needed. So we don't believe a legislative action is necessary at this time. As President O works with board staff to develop the regulations and the processes, we would just encourage you to be mindful of developing a process that allows licensees to petition the board to add tests where there is a demonstrated demand and need for the specific tests that meet the specific parameters set forth by Code 4052.4. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments, Dr. Dang.
All right, and this is the moderator. It appears there are no further requests. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you, Sarah. All right, next is discussion and consideration of central fill pharmacies, including Title 16 California Code of Regulations, Section 1707.4. Members, Strategic Objective 1.2 calls for the committee and board to consider and pursue necessary changes in the law regarding various pharmacy practice settings to ensure variances in the practice are appropriate. Consistent with this strategic objective, the committee scheduled discussion on central fill pharmacies as well as discussion of mail order pharmacies under the next agenda item. The committee considered a number of policy questions included in the meeting materials. As the meeting materials included both the questions and a summary of the committee members' discussion and public comment, I will not review those information today. Following consideration of the various policy questions, the committee determined it is appropriate to update its regulations to remove some of the ambiguity in the law. I want to quickly also report out that during the committee meeting, members of the public suggested that the board could convey its policy through a means other than through rulemaking, suggested that the script may be an appropriate means by which to convey the information. However, DCA Regulation Council has confirmed that the board cannot interpret regulation through an FAQ or the newsletter. This must be done through regulation. Also reporting back that regarding a public comment that suggested the title of the regulation may be not be considered part of the regulation. However, Reg Council also confirmed that the regulation title is considered part of the regulation text and cannot be updated without going through the rulemaking process. As the committee chair, I will be working with staff to draft proposed changes to regulation text for the consideration of the January licensing committee meeting. Members, do you have any questions or comments? Seeing none, we're going to move on to WebEx. Sorry, Sarah, you went a little eager. It's still D as in David hour, but it's okay. Go ahead. Yeah.
All right, this is the moderator. At the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon, look at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. And it looks like we have a request from John Gray. And John, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. This is John Gray. I'm a registered pharmacist with Kaiser Permanente. Thanks for the opportunity to comment on this. Again, this was the one where there was a lot of discussion, so we appreciate the licensing committee's efforts to kind of host a really productive discussion on this during its committee meeting. I will say from my perspective, the consensus of the commenters during the committee meeting was that the practices that are currently allowed, either explicitly or based on the way the board currently applies the current regulations, are working well, and that the regulated public desires confirmation that the board does not plan to change the way it has applied the regulation. We understand Regulatory Council's recommendation and assessment that rulemaking is necessary. And we encourage the board to take sort of a light touch approach and focus on the issues outlined in the meeting materials and discussed at the committee meeting when updating the regulation. I'll also flag that in the meeting materials from the licensing committee, the letter that was provided by Quarles addressed the issue of automatic product verification within pharmacies, and it was discussed during the committee meeting to some extent as well. You know, the letter from Quarles does a good job of outlining the policy that the board published on this matter in the script in 2005. I will say that the regulated public views information that's published in the script as the source of truth of the board's position and policy on matters, and that the underlying law outlined in those 2005 articles in the script has not changed. So we would continue to encourage the board to simply acknowledge that the articles it published in 2005 on the issue of automatic product verification are still representative of the law, the pharmacy law as it exists today. Thank you very much for the opportunity to provide comment.
Thank you for the comments, Dr. Gray.
All right, this is the moderator. Appears there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you, Sarah. All right, next is discussion and consideration of the board's regulation of mail order pharmacies. Not shying away from tough topics here. The committee also began evaluation of mail order pharmacies. The meeting materials summarize the discussion, where I believe there is a consensus among members is the need for better regulation of non-resident pharmacies and concern that the board does not currently inspect such facilities. The committee suggests that the issue of out-of-state inspection should be raised as a new issue and part of the board's sunset report. Members, do you have any questions or comments? We are ready. Oh, Maria, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to thank the committee for bringing up the issue of inspection of non-resident pharmacies. That's something that we have also discussed in enforcement committee, because we do track and have metrics for routine inspections of California pharmacies. And I'm looking forward to seeing some sort of metrics on how many out-of-state pharmacies have routine inspections. It's a cost issue. So we do routinely inspect sterile compounding licenses outside of the state, but not other non-resident pharmacies. So thank you for bringing that up again.
Thank you, Maria. Thanks for the comments. All right, any other comments before we open up for public comment? Okay, Sarah, we're ready for public comment.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access these features and submit their requests.
And just for the record, I am visually monitoring if anyone is stepping up in person at Sacramento location.
All right, and it appears there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you, Sarah. Next agenda item is discussion and consideration of licensing statistics. Members, attachment 2 includes licensing statistics for the first quarter of the new fiscal year. The board has issued 2,445 licenses to individuals and 182 site licenses and 96 temporary licenses. Congratulations to all of those individuals who received a license during the first quarter, including new graduates of pharmacy schools and those entering pharmacy school. A review of processing time shows improvement in several areas. The data report reflects the oldest application of each application type. I highlight that only so that members and the public understand the board's average processing time is shorter than what is reported on these reports. As was projected, with the staff vacancies being filled and onboarding processing times in several areas of operations have improved. As a committee, we will continue to monitor the progress made by staff. I'd like to again publicly commend our licensing staff who have demonstrated great commitment to applicants during this time, many of whom are taking time away from family and friends working overtime, working weekends, working late nights to address these backlogs that have occurred. A big thank you to our licensing staff. We truly appreciate your hard work and dedication. With that, we're going to open up for public comment. Sarah?
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. All right, and seeing no requests for public comment, would you like me to close that Q&A feature?
Yes, please. Thank you so much. Okay, with that, that concludes Licensing Committee's report. And next agenda item is 14, Legislation and Regulation Committee. I will turn the meeting over to Jessie Crawley, Chairperson of the Legislation and Regulation Committee, to provide a report on the purview of the committee. Jessie?
Thank you, President O. On behalf of the Legislation and Regulation Committee, I'm pleased to report on items under purview of the committee. I'd like to acknowledge and thank my fellow committee members for their hard work, including Jose de la Paz, Trevor Chandler, KK Ja, Maria Serpa, and Nicole Tebow. During our July meeting, the committee reviewed several measures. As the legislative year is over, I will be reporting out on the final outcomes for measures. Action is not required by the board at this time. Members, as indicated in the meeting materials, there were 15 measures considered by the committee and board. As I mentioned during the committee meeting, you may note that there are some measures that were previously considered by the committee and the board that are not included. Generally, this is because the measure is either no longer impacting the practice of pharmacy or is not moving. These measures include Assembly Bill 602, which was amended to address false advertising of pregnancy-related services, Assembly Bill 1619, which was related to pharmacist disclosures of cannabis interactions, Senate Bill 524 related to pharmacists furnishing specified prescription medications based on CLIA waive tests, and Senate Bill 826 related to criminal history information are not moving this year. With those brief announcements, we will now proceed to the measures on the agenda. As a reminder, as part of the report from the Enforcement and Compounding Committee, the board discussed implementation of various measures. As no action is taken, I intend to review all of the measures and then open for discussion. The first one, Assembly Bill 317, will require a health care service plan and specified disability insurers that offer coverage for a service that is within the scope of practice of a pharmacist to pay or reimburse the cost of services performed by a pharmacy at an in-network or out-of-network pharmacy as specified. As we previously discussed, the Licensing Committee has received public comment from pharmacists detailing barriers to patient care stemming from a lack of reimbursement. The measure was sponsored by the California Pharmacists Association and National Community Pharmacists Association. The board established a support position and the measure was approved by the governor on October 7th. Assembly Bill 663 will allow a mobile unit deployed as an extension of a county-owned pharmacy to carry controlled substances approved by the FDA for the treatment of opioid use disorder under specified conditions. This measure follows up on last year's provisions, which created the initial authority of the use of a mobile unit as an extension of a county-owned pharmacy. The board established a support position. The measure was approved by the governor on October 8th. Members, Assembly Bill 782 would have amended Business and Profession Code Section 4126.8 to exempt from the definition of compounding the adding of a flavoring agent to enhance palatability. The board had an oppose unless amended position on the measure, and the measure was vetoed by the governor on October 8th. Assembly Bill 913 would require the board to license and regulate pharmacy benefits managers as specified. It would require the board to promulgate necessary regulations and prepare a report to the legislature on or before August 1st, 2025, and annually thereafter. The measure would address inequities that currently exist in pharmacy reimbursement models. As was previously announced, the measure has been updated to a 2-year bill, and the board has a support position on it. Members, Assembly Bill 1060 would have made legislative findings regarding the naloxone hydrochloride as a medicine that can counter overdose effects when administered in a timely fashion to reduce opioid overdose deaths. The measure would have also prohibited healthcare service plans, health insurance plans, and Medi-Cal from imposing a cost-sharing requirement, including a copayment or deductible for coverage provided, and shall require the plan to cover the costs of prescription or non-prescription naloxone. The board had a support position on the measure, and the measure was vetoed by the governor on October 7th. Assembly Bill 1286 was the board's patient medication safety bill and was signed by the governor on October 8th. You will note that the measure was amended several times to address concerns from opposition. The basic tenets of the measure remain present, although some different approaches are now in place. I'm excited about the board's measure, which I believe has the potential to significantly reduce medication errors and improve patient care. Members, Assembly Bill 1341 establishes temporary authority for a pharmacist to furnish COVID-19 therapeutics until January 1st, 2025 under specified conditions. Pharmacists have been performing these functions under a waiver issued by the DCA as well as provisions of the PrEP Act. The measure was signed by the governor on September 30th. The board had a support position on the measure. Assembly Bill 1557 was also a board-sponsored measure. The measure was signed by the governor on September 1st. The measure makes permanent authority for a California licensed pharmacist to perform medication chart order reviews from a remote location within California on behalf of a California licensed healthcare facility licensed under Health and Safety Code Section 1250 under specified conditions. Senate Bill 339 would authorize a pharmacist to furnish up to a 90-day course of PrEP or beyond under specified conditions. It would require the board to adopt emergency regulations by July 1st, 2024. Further, it would require health plans and health insurers to cover PrEP and PEP, including medications furnished and tests ordered by pharmacists as specified. The bill addresses some of the challenges discussed during the Licensing Committee's recent post-implementation discussion on pharmacist-provided PrEP and PEP. Further, it updates the law to allow for the flexibility in treatment by removing the specified type of PrEP authorized to be furnished. It also provides a mean by which a pharmacist can continue to provide care beyond 90 days under specified conditions, including that a patient receives testing and follow-up care consistent with CDC guidelines. The board has a support position on the measure. The measure was placed on an inactive file late in the legislative year, but I'm hopeful that the discussion will continue and that the measure will be reconsidered earlier next year. Members, Senate Bill 345 will prohibit a board from suspending, revoking, or denying a license of a person based solely because the licensee provided legally protected activity as defined. Legally protected activities include the exercise of rights related to reproductive healthcare services or gender-affirming healthcare services. The board had a support position on the measure, and the governor approved the measure on September 27th. Senate Bill 427 would prohibit prior authorization or step therapy for medications approved for the prevention of AIDS and HIV under specified conditions. The measure would allow for prior authorization or step therapy if at least one therapeutically equivalent version is covered without prior authorization or step therapy. The measure was placed on the inactive file late in the legislative year. The board originally established a support if amended position, but was later changed to a support position following amendments that strengthened the healthcare coverage protections. Staff will monitor the measure next year and bring the matter back to the committee and the board for further consideration as appropriate. Members, Senate Bill 544 creates temporary authority for remote board meetings under specified conditions. As we received a presentation earlier in the meeting about the provisions, I will just note that the board had a support position on the measure. Senate Bill 816 included the board's fee proposal. As a reminder, the board's fee proposal recasts the board fees consistent with the independent fee analysis performed. Some fees will be reduced, some will remain the same, and other will be raised. The governor signed the measure on October 10th. Senate Bill 873 would require the cost sharing savings of a prescription drug based on rebates received to be calculated at the point of sale as specified by requiring healthcare service plans or insurers to provide the information to the dispensing pharmacy. The measure was held in Senate Appropriations Committee. Members, Senate Bill 887 was an omnibus measure that included a board-sponsored provision to change the deadline for the board to submit its legislative report on the use of automated drug delivery systems to coincide with the board's sunset process. The measure also included provisions for several other programs with the Department of Consumer Affairs. The measure was approved by the governor on October 8th. Members, having quickly reviewed each of the measures as well as received public comments, including one late in the evening a couple days ago, do you have any questions or comments about the information provided? I know that was a lot. Okay, hearing none. And do we have any public comment in Sacramento?
There's no longer a member of the public here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Anne. And then moderator, we can open it up for public comment via WebEx.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. And it looks like we do have a request from Julie 3. And Julie, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Hi there, board. Again, thank you for your time today. It's Julie Threed. I'm up here in Butte County, former healthcare worker at Enloe Medical Center, and I worked with public health department at these vaccine clinics before I was injured. I just wanted to add comment about 1341, and I know it's already been signed by the governor, but just for future reference and for anybody listening, I just think it's a dangerous precedent to continue to allow pharmacists to be in the position of prescribing emergency use authorization products, especially when they're coming from places where we've had problems. Pfizer right now is on the hook for 22,917 dead people by their vaccine that they haven't accounted for. And this Paxlovid has a repurposed drug that Fauci inserted into it, that ritonavir. And I thought we couldn't repurpose drugs. That's why he's not allowing ivermectin. And he wanted to allow ivermectin to not be an available, therapeutic, which now we know is a valid therapeutic, because he wanted remdesivir to be under emergency use authorization. Well, guess what? That's another one of his drugs that he gets paid on through his patent. And that horrible drug, which has got a lot of people dead with kidney failure, is actually part of a lawsuit here in California in Shasta County for Gilead, for false marketing and for a lot of the problems and the deaths that they're having here, because we've got really good consumer protection laws. So I appreciate the board having an advocacy for consumer protection. I want to protect your pharmacists and your pharmacy staff and the CVS managers, et cetera. And this, this ritonavir and this Paxlovid with all its black box warnings and all this death that's surrounding Pfizer, it's just, it just needs to be continued to be monitored. Pfizer's got the largest fine in consumer history, $2.3 billion in 2009 for these drugs that they have illegally marketed. Vioxx, 3,000 people died from Vioxx, and Merck just had to pay $4.85 billion and then voluntarily remove it from the market, but never had to explain themselves. So again, I appreciate you guys having these opportunities. I will join every call because I think it's important, especially as a consumer who's been injured by a pharmaceutical product. So thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it. And again, your moderators are fabulous. Sarah, you do a fantastic job. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments.
All right, and it appears there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you. I will now bring the discussion back to members. If there are no additional comments, I'll move on to the regulations portion of my report. Members, all of the items included in the regulations portion of the report are for information only. As detailed in the meeting materials and associated attachments, the board has several regulations in various stages of promulgation. I do not intend to review each of the information contained within the public materials. The board has 2 regulations undergoing final review by the Office of Administrative Law, including the proposed updates to the board's Notice to Consumers poster. The board has 1 regulation undergoing final review by the Department of Consumer Affairs. The board has 8 proposed regulations undergoing pre-notice by the Department of Business, Consumer Services, and Housing Agency. Staff are working on preparing the initial rulemaking documents for the proposed changes to the board's quality assurance regulations, as well as updates to the self-assessment forms that will be updated through the Section 100 streamlined regulation process. Members, do you have any questions or comments on the regulations? Hearing none, we can open up for public comment via WebEx if we still don't have any public members present in Sacramento.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. All right, and seeing no requests for public comment, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you. Thank you again, everyone, for your help. Not only my committee members, but also the staff for all your hard work on the legislation. And if there are no other comments, President O, I'll return the meeting back to you.
Thank you, Chair Crowley, for all the amazing work. We're almost there, everyone. So next agenda item 15, Communication and Public Education Committee. Turn the meeting over to our chair, Jason Wise, chairperson of the Communication and Public Education, to provide a report on the committee's work. Thank you, Jason. The floor is yours.
Thank you, President O. You are correct. We are almost there. On behalf of the committee, I am pleased to provide the board with a summary of the committee's efforts at its July meeting. Thank you to my fellow members, Vice Chair Nicole Thibault, Renee Barker, Jose De La Paz, and KK Jha. Agenda item A, discussion and consideration of update to the website. Members, as included in the meeting materials, the board will be updating its website to a new template for state agencies. The vision for the new model is to create a seamless digital experience for Californians accessing the services they need. The meeting materials provide an overview of the template and requirements. It is my understanding that the website could be ready for migration to the new template by the end of the year. Since our committee meeting, I had an opportunity to review the updated webpage template that will be used, including highlighting upcoming meeting dates and item we discussed as a committee. Members of the committee have volunteered to serve as resources to the staff during the development process as questions arise. Are there any member comments from the committee? Not seeing any. As we open for public comment, we will begin with public comment from individuals participating in the Sacramento location, and any comments in Sacramento.
Yeah, the members of the public have left.
All right, thank you. Moderator, we're ready for participation via WebEx.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. All right, and seeing no requests for public comment, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you. On to agenda item B. An update on communication and public education activities by staff. Members, the meeting materials detail out various activities under development or provided by staff. The script was released last week and includes a range of topics, including the most common violations that result in the issuance of a citation and fine, and the top corrections ordered during inspections. The committee identified 3 education campaigns, the first of which is focused on naloxone. As you may recall, the board is in the process of updating its regulations regarding pharmacists provided naloxone in response to changes in statute. Board staff recommended that educational materials be updated to reflect the changes in the requirements and a campaign to be developed to support the release of the new requirements in educational materials. Staff is recommending that the public awareness campaign related to treating pharmacy staff with courtesy be incorporated in with the campaign related to the revised notice to consumers poster. The messaging would focus on the importance of speaking with pharmacists as well as messaging about pharmacy personnel and the importance of services they provide. The committee previously also requested an educational campaign on the Institute for Safe Medication Practices, ISMP. The board's website has been updated to a link to the ISMP homepage. Further, as part of our education campaign, information will be included in the next issue of the script. Members, do you have any questions or comments on the education campaigns or newsletter? Seeing none, since we have no public in the Sacramento location, moderator, we're ready for public comment via WebEx.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access these features and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you. Lastly, I would like to highlight that outreach efforts undertaken by staff include the number of presentations provided to the various schools of pharmacy. Members, do you have any questions or comments on the information provided? If not, I'll turn this meeting back over to President O.
Thank you, Chair Wise. Appreciate that. And last but not least is agenda item 16, our executive officer report. And the floor is yours.
Hi, good afternoon. I'll keep it brief. The sunset review process is an opportunity for oversight committees of the legislature to learn about the board's efforts to fulfill its consumer protection mandate. Compilation of the report is a large undertaking. So to monitor progress, the board requested annual reporting on our efforts. Included in the meeting materials is updated information on anticipated areas of reporting for the board's sunset report. The data will also help us identify and inform the legislature on trends. It is also recommended that over the coming year, as committees are discussing various policies, that it identify issues that would be appropriate to raise as part of the sunset review process. In addition, the next item, the semi-annual statistics for the CPJE and NAPLEX are not yet available. We do apologize for the delay. It is anticipated that the data will be available next week. Upon completion and validation of the information, we will be sending it out to members. We will post the information on our website, and we will provide the information also to the deans for the various California schools of pharmacy. In addition, as we learned earlier today, the FDA has released a guidance document conveying a 1-year stabilization period for provisions of the Drug Supply Chain Security Act. I also wanted to highlight that in addition to having the staff member participate at the national level, as was discussed during the presentation, the board has been providing general education and promoting resources available to assist licensees in facilitation of the requirements through both the mandatory CE pharmacy law webinar. It is also discussed during presentations in person, and information is provided at association meetings. Field staff are also providing general education as part of the inspection process. The next item is really just for situational awareness that the DEA has published its final revised regulations, allowing DEA registered pharmacists to transfer electronic prescriptions at a patient's request. And then finally is also just the annual update on the board's business modernization. Business modernization is the process that the board must undertake to determine what, if any, changes are appropriate to the systems used by the board to support licensing and enforcement related activities. The process does involve many different activities. As we've continued to progress through the process, we've reached another milestone in the business modernization process by defining the functional requirements necessary for the system. We are looking forward to learning about the next steps and continue our partnership with DCA on this process. President O, that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you for such a quick report. I'm sure there's a lot in there. Okay, with that, we're gonna open up for public comment, I believe, just to be safe, for Sarah
All right.
on WebEx
This is
for Anne's report.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access these features and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A feature?
Yes, please. Thank you, Sarah. All right, with that, we are through all the items. Thank you, everyone. I really, really appreciate all your time and hard work and dedication, board members and the public, for participating always. You all are amazing. And so thank you, thank you, thank you. The next board meeting is scheduled for December 13th via WebEx. So looking forward to seeing you all there. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. See you soon. Take
Thank you.
care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.